Good morning. It's 9 o'clock and time for the June 7th meeting of the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County to commence. We're going to begin with an invocation by Deputy Teddy Floyd of the Indian River County Sheriff's Department, and that will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Dylan Reingold, the County Attorney. Please rise.
Let us bow our heads. Father, we thank you. We thank you for our commission. I thank you for my sheriff. I thank you for all of our chiefs. God, I thank you for every governmental entity that is present. God, I ask that you bless our community, look over us, guide us, protect us. God, give us understanding, wisdom to continue to make this a great county, God. And with that, God will give you all the praise. Let us say amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Teddy.
Please remain standing, face the flag, and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Gentlemen, we have a few additions and deletions to the agenda. I'll go through the ones that have been suggested to me, and if you have any additions after that, feel free to speak up. First, there's a request to move 12A1, which is a jobs credit application, to just after the constitutional officers. There's a request to add Marty Ziekert as basically the first presentation this morning. He's going to do a quick update on the Blue Angels. Then there are two deletions, 10B1, the Rigby's, and 10B2, Mr. Menzing, have both asked to be pulled from the agenda. Anything else?
Mr. Chairman?
Sir.
Colonel Ziekert has another engagement. Would it be possible to place him before the presentation proclamations?
That's what I just said.
No, right.
Yeah,
Okay.
just the first
No.
presentation.
Yes, the first one. Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else?
Approve as amended? Oh, the Marty one was the one I was going to add.
Okay, then fine. We have a motion from Commissioner Zork, a second from Commissioner O'Brien. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes 5-0. Thank you, gentlemen. We move on now to Marty Ziekert for a quick presentation on the Blue Angels. Name and address for the record, please.
Thank you. There will be an air show in Vero Beach. It'll be with the Blues or without the Blues. It will be a very, very good show without the Blues. It'll be a great show with them. My sincere condolences, which I will pass from the county. I've already passed them up to the Blues. I am going to the memorial service tomorrow. Memorial services at 11 o'clock at Naval Air Station, Pensacola. And I will pass condolences to the county and the city as well. I expect them to be here. Based on the years of experience, when you have an accident, you never expect it, but you're always ready for it. It's just the way we lived in the fighter community. This was a very unfortunate one, the first one in 10 years. Nobody really knows what's happened. The prevalent thought is that Jeff had something happen. We don't know what it was. He had an option of bailing out. He had time to do that. And the airplane could have went anywhere. There were apartment buildings, there was an elementary school, there was a bowling alley, all within range of the airplane. He chose to ride it into a golf course. Not the first I've went through, but that's kind of the way the fighter community is. We expect them to show up, quite honestly. After a memorial service, they usually will have a day off, and then they start flying again. Dayton is the next one. They've already canceled this coming weekend at Syracuse, but Dayton is the following one, and we're after Dayton. So I expect them, unless it was some mechanical failure that would cover the entire fleet, I expect them to be here. That's just the way it is in the fighter pilot community. So if there's any questions at any time, feel free to call me. Every one of you has got my number. Feel free to call me. As soon as I hear something, I will let everybody know. But as of now, the air show still goes on. Saturday night is, if you remember the very first food frenzy that the Buggy Bunch put on, they had 10,000 people show up. Well, this one's bigger and better than that one would have been. So I expect the same number of people. We will have all the performers there. We'll have veterans there. So The only thing that's going to be missing if the Blues cancel is the fact that they won't be there. But I'm counting on them being there. We're proceeding down the road as if they're coming. Questions?
Thank you, Colonel Ziegert, and thank you very much for taking our condolences.
Thank you. I appreciate you fitting me in first. Thanks.
Chairman, if I might, Marty, can you, the actual, is there 2 service times? There's the one Thursday at 11 that I think some of the board members are going to, and well as yourself.
That's the one at NAS. They also have a
Okay.
memorial service in Durango, Colorado,
Okay,
and that's on Saturday.
okay,
So that was his hometown.
great.
Thank you. Appreciate the offer.
Thank you, Marty.
Thank you, Marty.
We now have the presentation of a proclamation in recognition of Indian River County's emergency management team. This will be read by Commissioner Zork and presented to John King and Etta Lepresti. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to hold this up for a minute, but since it weighs about 10 pounds, I'm going to set it down while I read the actual proclamation. This is a proclamation in recognition of Indian River County's emergency management team. Whereas the area's emergency management efforts began 100 years ago in 1916 as a civil defense program that earned the title of the Council of National Defense. And whereas on April 28, 2016, the emergency management program of Indian River County became the 11th county in the state of Florida to be granted full accreditation by the Emergency Management Accreditation Program, EMAP. And whereas EMAP provides accreditation to provide the capabilities of a community's disaster preparedness and response system through an exhaustive process that evaluates compliance with the requirements in the 64 standards, including planning, resources management, training, exercise, evaluations, corrective actions, communications, and administration. And whereas the attainment of this significant achievement was set into motion in August of 2014 by Emergency Services Director John King and made possible due to the leadership, dedication, determination, and relentless efforts of Emergency Management Coordinator Etta Lepresti and Emergency Management Planner Rachel Ivy. And whereas their leadership, along with the support and commitment not only of the entire staff of Indian River County Emergency Operations Center, but also a multitude of local, state, and national organizations resulted in proof to our residents and stakeholders that Indian River County's emergency management is focused on sustainable programs that we have the community's interest at heart. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Indian River County Board of County Commissioners that we do hereby recognize this honor bestowed upon Indian River County Emergency Management Department's ability to bring together personnel, resources, and communications from a variety of agencies and organizations to reassess our centuries-old commitment to ensuring the best of our ability to safe and protect our citizens, adopted the 7th day of June 2016, signed by all 5 county commissioners. Congratulations.
Thank you, and good morning, Commissioners. For the record, my name is John King, Emergency Services Director. And to get this ball rolling, many of you may remember that you attended a Florida Association of Counties meeting about 2 years ago, and you came back from that meeting and had a conversation with the county administrator about why doesn't the county consider getting the accreditation that was recommended by the Florida Association of Counties? And the backstory is Governor Rick Scott appointed Brian Kuhn. He's the State Emergency Management Director. He also sits on a national committee to encourage emergency management, preparedness, and coordination of activities, because throughout this country, including Indian River County, unfortunate things happen to great communities. Not unlike a couple weeks ago when we got over 11 inches of rain in the south end of the county and we had water all over the place. There's an expectation by the community that the Emergency Management Office is prepared to give them information and to help coordinate the agencies to make sure we have a quick response to that. And so, as you read the proclamation, you mentioned that we were the 11th county in the state to get this proclamation. I would tell you that I'm standing next to the #1 planning team in the state. Introduce to you, you know who she is, but for the people that are watching this, Emergency Management Coordinator Etta Lepresti and Emergency Management Planner Rachel Ivy. They've been with us. They were here in the 2004 hurricanes, 2005 hurricanes. These are the ladies that were sending out the emails to you and to this community on Friday about Tropical Storm Colin, and over the weekend they were sending out information to you. And I would tell you that the civil defense that your parents and grandparents knew is not the emergency management agency we have today. And these ladies work with the cities, they work with the constitutional officers, and I'm very, very proud of the accomplishments and the legacy they're leaving around the state, because we have, or they have, other counties calling and saying, how did you do this? How did you create a pet-friendly shelter? How did you create a special needs shelter? One of the first counties in the state to actually have a special needs shelter. So they're standing here today getting an award, but it's for more than 15 years of work these ladies have put together for this community. So they're not just employees, they're truly engaged in this community, and thank you for recognizing my coworkers.
Thank you.
I'd like to second some of the remarks. I mean, you've done a tremendous job, and I understand the importance of a good woman behind any man. So.
I have two,
Yeah,
and one at home.
all the better for you, but clearly the work that the people in your department, especially Etta, have done to bring this before the county has been exceptional, and we're very appreciative of it, and I'm sure the citizens of Indian River County are particularly appreciative of it today.
Mr. Chairman, I have one question. John, is this similar? I know the Sheriff's Department accreditation they have, where then some of members of his department in the past then become part of the, I don't want to say the accreditation auditing team that goes and looks at other areas. Does this function in a similar fashion, or do they have a different accreditation set of folks that look at the information?
It is very similar. In fact, there's a cost to have an accreditation, and the ladies were successful in getting the state to put us in a pilot program, covered all of our upfront costs. On the back end of this, there's a great deal of work that has to go into preparing for an interview and a evaluation team to come in, and they're from all over the country, and they're selected to come in and go through our criteria and make sure it meets a national standard. And on the tail end of this, because they were awarded this accreditation, the county has also benefited by getting a $10,000 addition to our grant opportunities this fiscal year. And we believe there's been some discussion in Congress right now about making more money available in the future to counties who have been impacted by a disaster. If you have an accreditation and you have met all the standards, Congress is considering improving what your FEMA receipts would be if you were a victim of a severe weather event or some other disaster.
Good. That definitely with FEMA, those words could come in handy.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Davis.
Yeah, I'd like to, first of all, congratulations and thank you. And I think that, you know, when you look back at the devastation that the community went through the hurricanes of Francis and Jean, it was bad, but we were able to take that and turn it into a learning experience, and you can't get any more experience than having gone what you went through on the front lines. And as I see so many, so much of our institutional knowledge retire, it's very concerning about, you know, that was a tremendous learning experience. So how do we leave that experience behind for those that are next in line? And I'm going everywhere from all three of you in front of, as far as emergency services, Mr. Baird, Chris Mora. I could just go down, you know, the team that played into helping this community recover, and the little things you learned, like we would have been better off taking our debris to Okeechobee's landfill with waste management than using our own because of the way the FEMA formula is refunded, and it's just those little things like that now with this accreditation, it almost makes it so that you know, the next person in line behind you will have a checklist. They'll have something that they can go through that they might ask why, but they'll ask why after we go through the process, not in the middle of it. So thank you for the extra work, because clearly you didn't have to do it. It was above and beyond what you normally would get paid for, but thank you.
Commissioner O'Brien.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just, again, congratulations. You all make us real proud, and just keep up the great work. Thank you.
Thank you.
At the risk of making this Etta Lopresti Day, Etta, I recall very vividly working with you, for you, at the EOC, and we did not have the type of facility that we have today. So it's very easy to look at our EOC and say, well, the job could be done.
It was rough.
And it was rough. It was raining inside the building, and
Yes.
we had very limited resources. And IT was running wires to a laptop and a makeshift telephone communication system. And you're very much part of the development of the EOC and what we have today. And I think the citizens of Indian River County are fortunate to have you, and in return, what we've done is we've canceled your visa out of the county so you cannot retire. So we truly appreciate you and your efforts, and the entire team's efforts. Chief, we did call her chief during the hurricanes, and thank you.
Yes.
And it was
Thank you. I
all-
appreciate all of your nice comments, but I do want to close with one thing, and that's a quote from Steve Jobs, and that is that anything great in business is not accomplished by just one person. It's a team of people, and I would have a multitude of people to thank for making our program a success. We have a number of stakeholders, the municipalities, our emergency support functions, our department heads, and Indian River County staff, and Rachel's been a great partner, and of course Chief King, and without them we would not be where we are today. But we've certainly made a lot of improvements since 2004, and hopefully we don't have to implement those. But I think that the accreditation has made us better, and I can tell you that in the beginning, when Chief King mentioned being accredited, it was intimidating, and we knew it was going to be time-consuming and a lot of work, but in the end it was very rewarding, and I think, as you had said, that people who follow us will be in a much better position.
Yes.
Thank you very, very much.
Yes, I'd like to say, I'm extremely proud of our emergency management staff. I think it's probably the best in the nation. And Etta was just unbelievable during hurricanes. She ran the Emergency Operations Center. She kept us in line and organized, and she was just amazing. Not only does she get the award, but she can execute in time of emergency. So, and so can the whole staff. I'm extremely proud. Thank you.
Chief?
If we get calls all the time, and to be able to have that information right here is great.
One for that, and then one.
The big plaque.
This is heavy lift.
Is it upside down?
Are we in the center?
Right side, yes.
We thought you were texting.
Scott, you want to share that with IT? They'll help you out.
We'll now move to a public announcement for the hurricane preparedness. Are you ready? Indian River County Emergency Services and Solid Waste Department. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, it is my pleasure to work with the emergency services as well, so this is well timed. As I'm sure you're very aware, it is now hurricane season. It started last Wednesday on June 1st, so from now until November 30th, we want our residents to be prepared, we want them to be safe, and we want them to be aware of what's going on. So we've started out with a little bit of a bang this year. We have Tropical Storm Colin, so we're praying for our west coast that will dissipate quickly. There are a couple of things that you can be doing now to prepare for hurricane season. One of those things is trimming your trees and removing debris from your yard. I actually did not know this, but if you thin out the foliage, then the wind will go through your tree branches and you won't get plants uprooted quite as much. So I did not realize that, but trim your trees, and some of those branches can be very dangerous flying projectiles. So trim out your trees, remove any debris from your yard. They mentioned that there are local public shelters. Make sure you know whether you're in an evacuation zone and where those local shelters are. If you have special needs, or if you need a pet-friendly shelter, then you need to register for those before a threat is imminent. So make sure you know where those are and that you register for those if need be. You can also prepare your supply kit now. They suggest doing a 3-day supply of water, food, flashlights, just any tools that you might need in case of an emergency. So if there is an imminent threat, then make sure you keep in tune with the local media. We have a couple listed up here. The NOAA weather radio is one of them. And the emergency services actually has an alert system that you can sign up for on alertindianriver.com. So they'll actually send you messages to your phone, to your email, whatever you prefer, and you can know what's going on. Make sure your car has some gas in it. Make sure you turn on your refrigerator, your freezer to the coldest setting. You don't want all your food to spoil. Make sure you secure your home and your pets. And if you are told to evacuate, please do so. So those are some of the safety things that you can do. This checklist is actually an ad that we put in the paper. Whoops. There we go. The Hometown News and the Press Journal has these hurricane guides. There's a lot of really good information in there, a lot of good articles in there. We have our checklist in there. There are a number of other businesses and companies that have put their checklists in there. So if you have those, hold on to them. They're really great. You can still get the Vero Voice magazine. That has some good hurricane information as well. The other thing that we have is we put an ad in the Press Journal. There's a Press Journal insert, and you should all have one of those at your desk. I have a couple up here as well. If anybody's here and wants one, there's some up here. There's also some out by the table as you're leaving. So it has this checklist that's listed on it. And on the backhand side, as a recycling coordinator, of course, there's recycling information on there. So there's a little bit of information about recycling curbside, but on the bottom half, we have a map of where all of our customer convenience centers are. So if you are trimming your trees, if you are getting everything out of your yards, and you need to get rid of that old grill or that old lawnmower that's been sitting there, please bring them to the customer convenience centers. We'll make sure it's recycled and it's not a safety hazard. Another good idea is to clean out your garages. So if you have to bring in patio furniture or anything that you have outside, make sure you have a space in your garage. So if you miss spring cleaning, you can now do hurricane season cleaning. Lastly, I wanted to point out that we have the 2016 Hurricane Expo coming up at the Indian River Mall. This year it's at June 18th. They do this every year. It's from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Myself will be there. I will be there with the emergency services team. We'll be handing out disaster guides and tracking maps and any information that you might be interested in. There's a lot of great people there with a lot of great information. So come join us. So this was actually special for me. This was my second day of work here, so it's my 1-year anniversary, which is great. So bring this around full circle. But with that, I wanted to see if the emergency services would like to say something.
Again, John King, Emergency Services Director. I just wanted to say that we have a great relationship with a number of agencies, but particularly with the Solid Waste and Recycling Group. Been good planning partners, and here's one reason why we think it's such a great relationship and it's important to have a strong working knowledge of each other's responsibilities, because in a strong Category 2 storm or larger, almost 40% of the expected costs that taxpayers will bear is debris removal. And so that's a big hit. And County Administrator Joe Baird will tell you that debris removal in 2004 and 2005 was one of the biggest headaches he tried to manage. Was how are we going to pay to get all these trees out of here, and are we going to get any money back to help reimburse all that debris that ended up on public property. So June 1st through the last day of November is hurricane season. It's very unusual to have 3 named weather events this early in June. That's no indicator about the rest of the year, but I would just suggest that the most information, the best way to find out what's happening in Indian River County when there is a storm event is that Etta and Rachel keep the information available. They'll send to you. You can subscribe for that information by going to the county webpage. On the bottom left corner, there's an area where you can get alerts. You can get text messages. You can get emails. It comes right to your smartphone. And also are on Facebook when there's a real event. And again, those folks who were signed up a couple weeks ago was getting information about the heavy rainfall. And we also find or realize that when we have these severe weather events that our number of subscribers goes up quite quickly. And so Tropical Storm Colin was another time where people were signing on. So please tell your friends to do that. And we don't replace information the National Weather Service is giving out, but we will give you information about what's happening in Indian River County and what to expect over the next 6 to 12 hours. So thank you.
Thank you very much, John.
Thank you, Chief.
We'll now move on to approval of minutes.
Wait.
Stephanie, you done or?
Oh, yeah, I'm done.
Okay, great. Good job. Thank you.
Approval of the minutes of May 3rd, 2016.
So moved. Second.
Motion from Commissioner Flesher, second from Commissioner Zork. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Next up is information items. And gentlemen, I'd like to just make a comment on one. There's an update on the All Aboard Florida Vero electric expenses. And while we have been spending, particularly on All Aboard Florida, a good deal of taxpayer money to fight the project, I'd like to note that we recently got we recently received the 90% plans, and prior to that, there was an FRA report. And the way I understand both of them, that our basically work fighting this project has resulted in our plans going for the first time to the FRA before they came to us from All Aboard Florida, and that the FRA had significant comments which added significantly to the safety of the project and will result in us, Indian River County, having significant safety improvements that other counties had to pay for themselves or through grants. So as near as I can tell, and I don't have a definitive spreadsheet on this one, but it's pretty clear that a lot of money we paid to fight this project is being returned to us in the form of enhanced safety. So at the worst case, I believe, all our efforts, if we do fail, and I don't believe we will, but if we do fail, will result in a lot safer rail project, which will be to the benefit of the citizens of Indian River County. So I just wanted to point that out before moving to the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I have one question on the expenses towards Dillon. Now that, and it may also tie into a public works question, now that we actually have the plans, would we be able to better estimate the future cost implications of crossing maintenance and the lease agreements? Obviously, if you're going to a crossing now that has 2 arms on it, now you're going to go to a quad gate, you're going to have the motion sensors and the other parts of the safety program. To try to put a price tag, people ask, well, what will our future costs be going forward? And I know we don't know the answer at the moment, but at some point, I'd like to know before the project gets here, as best as we can estimate what those costs would be. I've heard other counties say based on the number of crossings they have and using that number going forward, it could be, you know, potentially an extra $750,000 a year or more. And those are only guesses at this time, but
Commissioner, I can tell you, I think the additional information is very helpful for that. Initially, Chris Mora had done a sort of back-of-the-envelope analysis, right. And it was back-of-the-envelope simply because we never had an idea of what the improvements were going to be. We were estimating based upon other communities' plans, and so I think that information will be beneficial in order for us to figure out that cost evaluation.
And then also with the positive control system and the sensors that are at the crossings that alert. You know, obviously, if that equipment has a life of 7 years and it's $100,000 a crossing, you know that we're going to pick up the bill to replace that when it goes for those types of.
We won't necessarily concede any of those points at this time. I will just simply say it will give us a better estimate of what the costs are. Right. But at this point, I don't think we're in a position to concede any liability of maintenance cost and the like.
But anything you'd like to share?
Rich Berka, Public Works Director. At this point in time, we don't have the information from the engineer as to exactly what type of electronics they are putting in these crossings, and that will go a long way to being able to calculate what it's going to cost in the future. Staff has been reviewing. We have a substantial amount of comments that we'll be providing back to AAF in a short time. But at this time, we just cannot. We don't have the information to calculate what it's going to cost in the future.
I think the only thing we could probably fairly say is that it will cost us a lot more. We just don't know how much.
I would not necessarily concede the us in that statement, sir.
Somebody will be paying more. We just don't know who. Great, thank you.
We'll now move to the consent agenda. Gentlemen, does anybody wish to pull anything from the consent agenda?
Move to approve.
I will ask first if there's anybody in the audience who'd like to approve anything removed from the consent agenda for discussion. Commissioner Davis.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Davis, seconded from Commissioner Flesher. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you, gentlemen. We'll now move to item 9, constitutional officers, and we have the clerk of the court with a very exciting announcement and presentation this morning. This one warms the cockles of my heart. Good morning, Mr. Smith.
Good morning. Jeff Smith, clerk of the court and comptroller. I hope you all took your no-dos before you got here this morning.
No, are you kidding? My heart's racing now. I mean, a new financial document for the county. This is the most exciting thing in the morning.
I'm here today to present to you the September 30, 2015 comprehensive annual financial report. The audit is completed by Raymond Robson, formerly Harris Cotherman here in Vero Beach. The delay in the completion date, they completed it in late May. The delay was due to a change in governmental accounting standards, which required us to report our net share of the pension liability of the Florida retirement system. In order to get those numbers from the Florida retirement system, we had to rely on them, and they didn't get it to us until to any county in the state until mid-April. So that was what the delay was. We still did get it on time to get the application in for the annual Government Finance Officers Association Award, so that's not an issue there. The opinion was unmodified, which means it's a clean opinion on the board and all 5 constitutional officers. There were no comments on the board. There were 2 comments on the property appraiser. It includes audit of all government, enterprise, internal controls, grant and bond compliance, and includes the 5 constitutional officers as well. An overview of how the reporting systems work. The county is the top level of the financial statements is called the county level, and it includes the BCC operations as well as all 5 constitutional officers. And then in a separate section of the financial statements, there's a set of financial statements for each constitutional officer themselves and for the board as themselves. That's the way it works. A few highlights under the county net position. You'll see that from 2014 to 2015 in the governmental type activities, the net position went down. That is due to the restatement for GASB 68, which is the pension liability. Before GASB 68 was implemented, we just footnoted the liability in the footnotes. Now it's mandated to be put on the balance sheet. That's why the net position went down, because that liability at the end of September 15th, the total county liability was $62.3 million unfunded net pension liability. Now that doesn't mean that, that would mean that all retirees and potential retirees would walk into the FRS at one point and one time and demand their money, which is not going to happen. But that is the unfunded liability, our share of the total FRS, and that's been audited by the Auditor General of the state of Florida and audited by our auditors as well. So the breakdown of that $62 million is for the board side, it's $32.5 million. For the sheriff, it's $23.4 million. For the clerk, it's $2.7 million. Property appraiser is $1.5 million. Tax collector is $1.5 million, and the supervisor of elections is $500,000. Next slide is net position components. The biggest part of your net position is the net investment in capital assets. That is defined as the original cost of the capital asset, less depreciation, less the net debt that's due to purchase that asset. And at the September 30th, it was $733 million of net investment in capital assets, of the total 960. So at September 30th, your unrestricted net position was $98.2 million, even after GASB 68 adjustments. So that's really good. The next slide is again, a top-level look at the changes in net position. And you will see that, again, the governmental activities went down, but that's because of the restatement for GASB 68. Business activities actually went up. There are some reasons for that. One is charges for services went up by $2.4 million this past year. Capital grants went up by $3.6 million. And you had the $3.1 million transfer from the governmental activities to the business type activities for the Osprey Marsh project. Business type expenses went up by 1%, which is about $500,000, so that was good control over the expenditures in the business type activities. That was led by increases in solid waste in the building department, but
offset by decreases in the water and sewer and the golf course. Next slide shows a review of the revenues. And the major part of revenues, obviously, is property taxes. 45% of the gross revenues are property taxes, followed by operating grants, sales and use tax share from the state, and charges for services, which was 13%. The next slide is a review of expenses. And the majority, obviously, of the expenses of the county is for public safety, that is the sheriff and EMS, followed by transportation, which is at 17%, general government expenses at 16%, and culture and recreation at 11%. The next slide is an analysis of the general fund itself, and you will see that the variance in the intergovernmental activities was $2.1 million due to grants received for the SRA. We budgeted for it, but we didn't receive all of the grant for the SRA before the end of the fiscal year. That's why the variance there is a negative $2 million. But you drop down under transportation on the expense side, and you'll see the corresponding $2 million because we didn't spend it if we didn't have the grant money come in. So that's where that's at. There was a $1.4 million decrease in the fund balance, mainly due to the expenses allocated for the fight for AAF and for the FMPA. The next one is a debt update, and this looks real good. The limited GO bonds have one more payment, and that will be done. We refinanced that with some limited GO notes in order to get a lower interest rate. So the balance at the September 30th, 15, the limited GO bonds was $3.5 million, and that whole payment is due this year in July, and that bond issue will be paid off. The note is at $20 million at the end of September. So we've reduced our debt there. Spring training bonds, the balance at September 30th was $7.23 million. And the water and sewer bonds, we refinanced a portion of that. We paid off the 2005 and took a note for the difference, and the 2009 has a balance of $21.1 million, and the note is at $7 million. So we did that for two reasons: one, for a lower interest rate, and for a lower principal and interest payment. So we got good value for our refinancing. All existing debt, with the exception of the spring training bonds, will be paid off in the next 8 years. The next slide shows how the outstanding debt has decreased substantially from the last 10 years, by 59%, of a high of $145 million down to $59 million. And so you've been very good about paying off the debt. In a later presentation I have on another financial report that I started to do this year, you'll see it per capita, how the per capita debt has decreased substantially. Our last slide is initiatives. We're going to continue to work on getting more vendors paid by electronically and reduce the number of paper checks that we're issuing. Our county, the lockbox and the actual banking contract both expire at the end of this calendar year. RFPs will be sent out this summer, and we'll be evaluating those to look at the potential for banking contract for the next few years. We've modernized, we're in the process of finishing modernizing the records in the office to the clerk to the board, and with your help we got Laserfish installed, and the data migration is being done currently. Soon the public will be able to search using the Laserfish here in the near future, which will make it a lot easier for the public to search your county records. We've received the Certificate of Achievement in Excellence in Financial Reporting for September for 32 straight years, and we anticipate that the current CAFR that you have will also get that award. And This year, we started a new initiative, which is I call the PAFR, Popular Annual Financial Report, and I'm going to go over that in a minute. You have that there on the dais. The Visa program, which we instituted in August of 2012 to pay vendors with, has generated $344,000 in rebates that comes right back to the board in the general fund. So you benefited by us paying with a Visa card, and you get the rebates back. As part of our pre-audit process of payables, we look at each invoice to, one, make sure that it's been board approved or there is proper department authorization to pay that bill. Number two, that it has a valid public purpose. And number three, that it's a legal payment. Four, that there's no sales tax being charged to the county as we're tax exempt. And five, that all discounts that are available are taken. I'm proud to say that with very few exceptions, all invoices were processed by the departments and got to finance in time for us to take the discounts. The notable exceptions are only when it is more prudent for the department to ensure that either the services or the products were delivered. And you can imagine in the water and sewer expansion projects and everything, and the inventory, it's more prudent that the utilities make sure that everything is accounted for before they send the invoice to us to pay. So with that exception, everybody was able to take the discounts, which is a good thing for the taxpayers. And for the CAFR, I'd like to thank my finance department, my finance director, Diane Bernardo, my assistant finance director, who soon will be taking over as finance director, Alyssa Nagy, Rayanne Cohn, Ed Halsey, in the finance department for all the work they did to produce this CAFR. Without them, this wouldn't have been possible. And I also want to thank Joe Baird and Jason Brown and his staff for the good working relationship that we continue to have, which I say this every year, but it is worth saying. That's not the case as it is in every county. You can just read the news and find out that that's not the case, and I'm proud that my predecessor established that working relationship, and I've been able to keep that going. So I want to thank Joe and Jason for that as well. Any questions on the CAFR before I go to the new thing that any questions? Okay, now you can access the CAFR and this new financial report either on my website or on the county's website. And this is a new thing this year that we've done. It makes what I just went over a lot more readable for the taxpayer. It's called the Popular Annual Financial Report. And I'd like to go over a few things in that with you. And I'd like to give kudos to my finance staff again for this, but also I want to recognize Laura MacGyver. She's the one that designed this entire book, took all the information that we gave her and my comments, and she made this book, designed it all herself. So I want to give her kudos for that as well. On the inside, you'll see a table of contents and a little bit about a letter transmittal from me to the taxpayers. It's not coming up, so, but you all have it on the dais. In this next page is a county overview about the county itself, when it was established. There's a map there that shows where it's located. And the five commissioners are there. We have pictures of things taken by contributors. Here you see some aquatic animals, stingrays and that kind of thing taken by IndianRiverByAir.com, and so we were able to access some of his pictures. The next page is a page on the elected constitutional officers, and we have the 5 constitutional officers there and a little bit more about how the budgeting process works between the constitutionals and the board. The next page is a role of the clerk and what my responsibilities are. I'd like to go to page 6 and 7, the major accomplishments and initiatives by the board this year. You started the intergenerational recreation facility in the South County on Oslo Road. later in the book there, you'll see a picture of it. That's a 40,000 square foot recreation facility down in the South County Regional Park. It's an $11 million project funded by impact fees and optional 1-cent sales tax. The other project you are working on is the 45th Street beautification project. Another one was the 20th Avenue and 16th Street intersection improvements. That's almost done, as you can drive by and see. Old Dixie Highway resurfacing from 71st Avenue to County Road 510, and the 1st Street Southwest and 43rd Avenue intersection improvements. 3 things that you completed this year was Fire Station number 13 in the South County, the Osprey Marsh, which is to take out nutrients out of the canals before the water goes into the lagoon, and the 66th Avenue improvements from State Road 60 to 49th Street were all completed during the fiscal year. The local economy, it shows principal employers. Obviously, the largest is the School District of Indian River with 2,113 employees. The taxable value, next to it is property taxes. The taxable value went from $12.8 billion to $13.4 billion in 2015, gross taxable value. Construction activity also saw a significant increase with 20% more building permits issued. And the population has steadily increased, growing to 143,000 plus in 2015. Unemployment dropped from 7.9% to 7.2%. Historically, Indian River County's economy was made up of agriculture and tourism. That's been complemented by service industry and healthcare and technology and light manufacturing. The top 3 employers are all government related, the school district, the medical center, and the county. The next private one is public supermarkets, and then rounding out the top 5 is Piper Aircraft. Down below there, you'll see on the left that's a per capita average personal income. We don't have the 2015 amounts yet, but that's been steadily increasing in the county since, actually, since the middle of the Great Recession. So that's good news for personal income. Property taxes, you'll see the largest principal property taxpayers led by Florida Power and Light. And next is Disney Vacation Development and Windsor Properties with Johns Island and the Axe community rounding up to top 5. The picture below is a dollar broken down in how the property taxes eat up the dollar there, and you'll see that a major portion of it is for the school board. The next page is a high-level government-wide financial statement. It shows the net position that we went over just a minute ago with the statement of activities as well. And the major emphasis there is GASB 68 again, the pension liability. The next page is governmental funds, and you'll see the revenue sources and a pie chart that shows the percentages and the expenditures in the table and the pie chart as well. Revenue increased over the prior year by about $8.4 million, led by almost $4 million in property tax increase, and the rest of it was charges for services and other income, grants. Expenditures on the other side increased by $3.5 million, so we were to the good by almost $4.5 million. And capital outlay for the fiscal year 2015 decreased by $11.3 million following the completion of the 66th Avenue Road project and the Osprey Marsh. The next 2 pages are for the general fund, and you'll see that the balance in the general fund in the bar chart down below, in the height of the Great Recession, it hit $56.5 million and has been up and down since then, but we're holding steady at about $50 million fund balance trend in the general fund. And that's unassigned, which means we can spend that if we have an emergency, like we just talked about a hurricane. We have unrestricted money there that the county can use to.
What does the best management practices normally ask for as far as a fund balance?
Usually 3 to 6 months worth of expenses, and we're good there. So you're well positioned financially to endure any kind of hardship cases and the like. The chart on the right shows the original budget, the final budget, and the actual amounts. And the difference there that I went over a little bit ago was the intergovernmental, the -2 million. That's because we budgeted for part of the grant for the SRA that we did not receive by September 30th. And the corresponding $2 million down in transportation, we didn't spend it because we didn't have it. So that counterbalances it. The next page is capital assets and debt. And capital assets, as we described a little while ago, is the infrastructure, buildings and improvements and land. And at the September 30th, it amounted to $790 million. And that's net of accumulated depreciation and net of debt that is used to acquire that asset. And down below there, you'll see a picture of the intergenerational recreation facility taken again by, and I thank Laura for taking that picture and including it in there. On the debt side, a little while ago I mentioned you'd see in my presentation how the per capita debt has decreased in the last 10 years. This projects it. In 2006, it was $1,071 per person. It's now down to $412 per person. So that's good. Overall debt has decreased from last year, obviously, because we paid some debt off from $73.7 million to $59.1 million. The next page is about investments and how we've adopted an investment policy, and it complies with state law and the makeup of how we've invested your dollars. And the bottom number down there, the investment balance at September 30th. And then I have a page here where you can the taxpayers can contact any elected official, and then glossary of terms. This is a standard popular annual financial report, and I am applying for the award from the GFOA for that as well. Any questions? I'm proud to
Commissioner O'Brien.
Yeah.
Jeff, I think this is a great document. I'd even suggest, I don't know, how many of these did you get printed up?
We've got about 300 to be printed, and we should be getting them this week. So.
Okay, I would suggest maybe taking a whole box full down to the chamber. So when a visitor comes in, this is about everything they need to know about the local government, and then the information to contact all the elected officials and everything. And I think it's just a great resource to give somebody new to the community or looking to come to the community that, here it is. And so I'd make sure they have a box full down there. But great job. It's wonderful.
And
Any other questions?
Again, Jeff, this is on the website.
Yes, it's on both your website and my website.
So easy to find by anybody who'd like a quick look at county finances.
As is the CAFR. The CAFR, we don't print very many of these, but this is how thick the CAFR is.
Yeah.
And you all have one.
It's a good thing you don't.
Yeah.
Commissioner Zork.
Yes.
Yes, Jeff, great job, and great thanks to your staff for all the good work that they do. As this document has, I see how it ties to economic development. When somebody's looking at where to go to and how stable is the local government, is this data for us and other counties in a place that we can say, here's how we stack up against, out of the 67 counties, you probably have 35 of those are active contenders. Everybody's looking for economic development, but you look at some counties that are just, there's more cows than people, so it's not really a ripe spot that we're competing with. But if we took say, the regional coastal counties, we could probably come up with a pretty impressive
Comparison. Yeah.
comparison of how we stack up
There's
overall.
not one website that you can go to do that. You'd have to go to each county's website.
Each one, okay.
Yeah.
We could compile something like that. I think it would just be a good fact sheet to have. I know when I brought to Florida Power and Light's attention when they announced the Okeechobee power plant that before they made the final commitment, I said, by the way, did you know if you were on the other side of the line, because it's right where our two county lines touch, that if they're on the other side of the line, I think, Jason, we ran some projections that the 20-year savings on tax was about $60 million. And they just said they were too far in the process to shift. They wish they would have known there was that kind of savings, and you would think with the number of consultants they have, they would have knew that in advance, but apparently they didn't, and they appreciated us calling it to their attention. But we said maybe something else in the future that they might do. We'd be happy to share our lower cost of taxes and operations.
One possible exception would be the AG's website. I know that all counties have to submit their CAFR and their
Okay.
financial reports to the Auditor General. They may have some kind of system to capitulate all
I'll
that
get with you
together.
on that. We can see
Yeah.
with Helene what might be a good one-pager to put up of how do we compare to these other areas. That gives them a long-term, historical and kind of a forecasting going forward of how stable our local economy, our government
County is,
structures
yeah.
are.
The county here is very, very strong financially compared to some of the counties that I know, the clerks and comptrollers in those counties. And so you all and the board's administrator and the budget office need to be commended because you've taken the taxpayers' money to heart and treated it as your own. And we are in very good shape financially if something disastrous happens that we can recover timely, where some counties are not in that enviable position. So.
And one last question, Mr. Chairman. On in looking at this, I hate to use the city of Port St. Lucie as an example, but that city within a county has about $1 billion of debt for a single city. Is there any prohibitions? I know the state of Texas about 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, passed that a local government couldn't exceed a ratio of their income coming in to how much debt they could have, and it's really helped Texas propel itself as being a very stable pro-business economy. Is there any prohibitions in Florida that keep somebody like a Port St. Lucie from going to $2 billion in debt? At some point, the system would collapse. You would think at $1 billion it would be awful close, but apparently it's still working.
Well, every governmental entity in the state of Florida has to have an audit done, and part of that audit is a review of their what we call going concern or financial stability. I'm sure I would hope that Port St. Lucie's auditors would have addressed that issue because they're required to report that to the Auditor General, and so if they have not done that, then the Auditor General would certainly pursue that. There is no particular law that prohibits the county, a city or county from going, but whatever they pledged for those bonds, they would have had to have the sufficient means to do that in order to pledge it in the first place. The problem with what Port St. Lucie has done is they've gone into a risky kind of venture where they've searched out for bio research companies, and that's a risky investment in the first place, and that's where they've got stuck because VGTI and Torrey Pines, they went out on the limb for those, and that's where they're hurting right now. So.
Right.
I commend the board here for going after business, but doing it in a prudent and a cost-effective way instead of just giving away the farm and then having to pay for it later.
Right. Great. Thank you.
Yes, I'd like to thank, Jeff Smith and I have had a great working relationship, and he really cares about the taxpayer's dollar, and I would like to say he's got an excellent staff to work with, and we're very fortunate because we've always worked well together, and I think it's mainly Jeff's disposition and not mine. So, but no, he's exceptional, and he really cares about the taxpayer and the taxpayer's money.
Jeff, thank you very much to you and your crew.
Thank you.
Jeff,
Yes.
outstanding job. Really appreciate it. You and your staff putting together the CAFA. You didn't lose a single one of us, which is remarkable in itself. We'll save riveting for next year. But this book, thank you.
You're welcome.
The selection of photographs and the information is very readable. Particularly, even got David Nolte in a suit. That's
No, I'm not believing that one.
Was that Indy River
That was
by air as
Photoshopped.
well, or was that?
That was provided by him, so.
No, but the information is extremely readable
Yeah.
to an untrained eye or a trained eye. It's just a very palatable document, and I believe the award is going to be in the mail.
Thank you. I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Again, thanks to my staff.
We move Treadstone, a jobs grant 12A1 to this point in the agenda. Stan, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Stan Bowling, County Community Development Director. This is a jobs grant application, and as such, there are some confidential data that's in some of the information that's been provided to you, but that is allowed under Florida statutes for economic development type of applications. Our local program, and it has been mentioned just with the previous item, is a pay-for-performance type of program where we pay for local jobs grants. We pay for local jobs after they've been in place for a year at a time at certain wage levels, and there is in the program itself incentives and higher incentives given for higher wage levels. So the number of jobs and the wage levels are checked after the fact, and the award is paid out in installments over 3 years. So the job grant is actually a 3-year type of obligation that's in place with each agreement. The particular project, Project Treadstone, is in the financial services industry sector. The applicant qualifies under the county's program as a target industry. Their location will be in Indian River County. Specific site has not yet been released. And as with all jobs grant applications, there's a review process conducted by county staff as well as the Chamber of Commerce staff, recommendation from a chamber review committee. And several sources are looked at, including Dun and Bradstreet Credit and Financial Report, as well as looking at official records. And again, no objections came through with any of the search conducted. For this particular application, what is anticipated are 25 jobs that qualify for the grant, with each of those jobs over 150% of the county average wage, which is over $56,823. So these are high-paying jobs. The total grant amount at maximum would be $175,000. Under the agreement, the applicant would have those jobs in place by January 1, 2018. There is some flexibility for an extension. We actually anticipate the jobs coming in before that. And again, the maximum amount is set with the agreement based on 25 high-level jobs, high-wage jobs. And here is a typical sort of scenario that would play out if all the jobs are created at those high wage levels, the payout after the fact each year, checking on tax records that are submitted to the state for the employees and the wage levels, with an eventual payout of $175,000 maximum. Also, along with the local jobs grant application, the firm has applied for a state qualified target industry grant, QTI program, and actually the local jobs grant funds, some of those can be used as a 20% local match, which actually leverages some of the ability of the company to obtain jobs grant funding from the state as well. So the item before you is not just for the local jobs grant, but it also includes actions by you to support the QTI application that this firm has applied for with the state. And it requires Board of County Commissioners to adopt a resolution, and you have one attached. The staff's recommendation, as well as the consensus of the Economic Development Committee, is that the board approve the local jobs grant for up to $175,000 for Project Treadstone. that you also authorize the chairman to sign the jobs grant agreement with Project Treadstone, and that the chairman sign the resolution of support for the QTI application with the state. Be glad to answer any questions you may have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Stan. Any questions of Stan at this time? There being none, Helene, I'll just ask you if you want to say something short and quick.
I'll be very short and quick. For the record, Helene Castletine, Economic Development Director with the Indian River County Chamber of Commerce, 1216 21st Street, Vero Beach. And as Stan mentioned, the client has requested confidentiality primarily due to the competitive nature of this industry. And we are working closely with Enterprise Florida in getting the client located here in Indian River County. Enterprise Florida and the governor first met with this client late last year in their home office in the Northeast. And so we have been working with the client since that time. And if you do the simple math, looking at the wages that are paid, and I will say, as Stan mentioned, most of those jobs are paying much more than the $75,000 that was indicated. And if you do the simple math, 25 jobs times the $75,000, it's $1.8 million just in paychecks that will be circulating in our local economy once the company has located here and hired all those 25 employees. And I would say that they anticipate the bulk of those employees to be on board before the end of the calendar year, actually. So that's really good news. They also anticipate a capital investment of over $5 million. So with that, I just wanted to point those things out and answer any questions you all might have. Unfortunately, the representatives of the company could not be here in town this morning. They were here for the original EDC meeting, but as you might recall, that was rained out because of that torrential downpour we had. So that's why the EDC, it was a consensus and not a full quorum vote.
Commissioner Davis.
Helene, just pure curiosity and for the public's knowledge, at what point can we expect for this to be public?
I would say I've been in contact with Enterprise Florida and with the company's PR people, so probably I would say by the end of the month.
Okay. All right.
Any other questions of Helene?
Yes. Or I have one, but
Commissioner Zork?
Yes, Helene, once we're successful and they're publicly announced, if needed, I'd like to see if we could come up with a special outreach to other firms like them to say, look who's coming to Vero Beach. And even if it's walking the halls of the building, as sometimes Governor Scott does, he sometimes does cold call sales to people to let them know what Florida has to offer: a great business, a great climate, a great business climate, great tax structure, all the wonderful things that the Northeast does not have to offer. So when the time's right, if we need to do something extra special, I think that would be great, so they know where they're going.
Right. I agree, Commissioner. And even just up to this point, the CEO and the Chief Operating Officer have been just overwhelmingly impressed with the rollout and the welcome that they've received thus far. So I don't think that's going to be a problem in getting more of those types of firms here in Indian River County.
Commissioner O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a comment, Helene, and you'll remember a couple of weeks ago we had a presentation on the economic impact of our job grant programs and our economic development activities, and we had a 15-to-1 return on investment. And as you mentioned, with 1.8 million annual, minimum of 1.8 million annual payroll, this will have a great positive benefit for the community. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to go ahead and move that we approve the job grants for up to $175,000.
Second.
That we authorize the chairman to sign the job grants agreement, and we authorize the chairman to sign the resolution of support for the company's QTI application.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner O'Brien, second from Commissioner Zork. Any other discussion? Anybody from the audience want to comment on this? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you very much, Stan and Helene.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
We will now move to public hearings. Public hearing and confirmation resolution for the 2nd Street Petition Millings Project at 35th Avenue and 232nd Avenue. Mr. Spierka, good morning.
Rich Berga, Public Works Director. What we have before you today is a public hearing and confirmation of resolution for the 2nd Street Milling Project. Brief history, representatives of the Emerson Park subdivision presented county staff with a petition to install asphalt millings on a portion of 2nd Street. 2nd Street is a dirt road between 35th Avenue and 32nd Avenue. Staff held an informal public meeting with the petitioners on February 3rd, 2016. And at that meeting, the residents requested that the millings be placed in the same location as the roadway with no shoulder improvements or drainage improvements to be done. Staff reviewed the information and assessed that the cost should be on a square footage basis, and the property owners consented with that information, and we moved forward. The development has 20 parcels, and originally the petition was 78.34% of approval. However, between the first petition and this time, one of the parcels has been sold. The owners contacted us and said they are not in favor of this project, and that reduced the approval, the percentage of approval from 78.34 to 68.34, which is still above the 66 2/3% required for a petition's milling project. The cost of the project is $71,556, 75% to be paid by the owners, plus a 2% collection fee. The total assessment would be $54,740. The county will pay 25% at $17,889. Staff recommends the Board of County Commissioners move to approve the confirming resolution with the attached assessment roll with changes, if any, made after the input from the public hearing. The confirming resolution with attached assessment roll and assessment plat will be forwarded to the chairman of the board for his signature. The assessment roll and assessment plat are available for viewing in the office of the clerk to the Board of County Commissioners.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Speaker? Commissioner O'Brien.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, two things. One is, just in case anybody's wondering on the percentages as far as property owners in favor, I believe that was calculated on a square footage basis.
Correct.
And not on a per parcel, and that way, you know, everybody, if you have a large parcel, you get a little bit more weighting than a bunch of smaller parcels. So I think that's a fair way to do something like this. It just makes sure everybody's kind of levels the playing field. Secondly, yesterday I received several phone calls from a resident within the project area that had some concerns, primarily that he may not have received proper notification. The individual is a former law enforcement person, I believe, and has the confidentiality on his address and such. And I know I had several conversations with him, and I think Dylan had some conversations with him. And then I just want to ask Dylan, did you get an updated email from the resident in question, and what we might need to do here to proceed?
I actually, last night, received a letter from an attorney representing the individual. It had been requested that I read this into the record today, as it was my understanding the individual was,
Mr. Reingold, Ryan DiGiovanni.
Okay.
I was also approached. I represent the unidentified law enforcement officer.
And your address for the record?
1620 26th Street, Vero Beach, 32960.
We want to open the public. Yeah, well, sir, if you would, we'll just wait 1 minute. We're going to open up the public
course.
hearing. We'll have you come up and make that statement at that time.
Very
Don't
good.
go far. I'll ask if there are any other questions of.
No.
Okay,
That
good.
was my question.
So I'm going to.
Okay.
I was going to
You
open,
want- okay.
open the public hearing and ask this gentleman to begin.
All right, I guess basically my client's position is that due process wasn't observed because he didn't receive the notifications. I believe a notification allegedly was sent to his residential address, you know, the one that his house sits in front of, because of his confidential, the confidential nature of his information. He's actually never used that address to receive any type of mail or notice, and the county appraiser has a different address on file. So one of the issues is whether or not Indian River County Code Section 20607 required that the notice be sent to the address on file with the appraiser, as opposed to the address where the house sits. My client alleges that he never actually received notice at all, not just that it didn't come to his attention at his P.O. box that the appraiser has on file, but that he never received anything. Additionally, there was some issue with the petition. I believe the petition was just addressed, and I know that there's some other residents who are also in the audience. The information that I have is that the petition was offered as, please sign here if you'd like more information on the cost estimates and more information on this particular project, not actually under the guise that this is your affirmation of support for the project. So although the number seems to be reached with a 66.7%, there are also people here besides my client's assertion that they didn't actually sign off on this project. So we were going to ask for a deferment. Alternatively, this is a money issue, and the fact that my client doesn't feel that he should be assessed the pro rata allocation, his due process wasn't observed. If the council was to agree to remove him from the assessment, he'd have no problem with the project going forward, but otherwise we're going to ask for a deferment and that proper notice be afforded to my client.
Okay. If I may ask a question?
Yes.
If we go forward and decide that we have to give proper notice, can we notify your office as a means of
Yes, I
proper
think that
notice?
would be fine.
So would you please make sure that the clerk has your full
I will.
address? Thanks.
Yes.
So is that your statement? Anything else?
Yes, sir, that is my statement.
Well, thank you. I'll ask if there's anybody else from the public who wishes to speak on this. Good morning. Name and address for the record, please.
My name's Larry Harris. I live at 3485 2nd Street, Vero. And I disagree with, I don't want this to happen.
Mr. Chairman?
Sir.
The information, the reason that some of us signed the petition was to obtain more information about it. And now that I have that information, I don't want any part of it. And I'd like my name to be taken off of it.
That was my question.
Thank you. That answers your question? Thank you very much. The other gentleman, does he wish to speak?
Yes, I didn't sign no petition.
Name and address for the record, please.
Cliff Honeycutt. I own block 3, 4, and 5, and I never signed no petition at all. I don't know where they get off that your percentage was that much on the agreement on this milling project.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Commissioner Davis.
Rich, do non-responses count as no's?
Yes.
Okay.
And Mr. Honeycutt is down as a no on the list.
Okay.
Now, Mr. Harris, who
Was a yes.
was a yes on the original list.
And is now a no.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Is there anybody else from the public who wishes to speak on this matter? Anybody else from the public? We will now close the public hearing portion of this.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Davis.
I think now that we have the official numbers back in, if there is any confusion, I wouldn't have a problem circling back around saying this is in fact what everybody's assessment would be. Because we clearly have a situation that very well may change it with just the one person there and the new owner. And so that's where I am on this as far as moving it forward.
Yeah, it seems to me that there's enough question about some of the notice, particularly with the officer, and if, well, I'll accept that he got no notification of it, and it's generally, in my view, not the way the board likes to go forward unless there's a clear...
And I'm not in favor of leaving him out of the assessment, but enjoying the milling road.
No, either am I. So, Commissioner...
Mr. Chairman, yes, I know that there's been plenty of hard work done in this, in the notification and the cooperation with the citizens. There's a lot of people that want it. But, you know, if this is a question of 97% and maybe there's somebody on the fence or perhaps maybe there was an error in delivery, it's clear that if this is to go forward at this point, we would have to notify everyone involved, ensure that every parcel is notified, and that we have a positive or negative response from each and every citizen. After all, it's their cost factor as well. It's not just simply from the taxpayer bringing a roadway in. There's enough ambiguity, so I have to say that we wouldn't be able to go forward, and that's my opinion. So with that, could we defer this, and if there's any further questions or appeal, that we could recanvass the community and ensure that we do the proper notification. It appears that there may have been one person left out or misdirected, but then again, no fault to the county because of the property appraisers protection. I mean, I share that same notification challenge too, and perhaps we have to revisit our notification process to ensure that everyone is notified.
And I'd just like to thank the Public Works Department. I mean, the Public Works Department has done, I believe, everything it should do in a very good manner. It's just, in this case, up against, I think, the board's general feeling that we don't want to assess anybody unless there's a very, very clear majority, because we don't like, for some people, this acts as a punitive tax, and we have a great reluctance to it. So while I applaud everything you've done, especially with the Millions program and with notification, I just believe that it's the consensus of this board that we're going to be extra cautious.
Mr. Chairman. Rich, if we defer this to July 12th, about 5.5 weeks, do you think that'd give you enough time to get notice out and get responses back in?
Yes, sir. I think that would be plenty of time to get notices out to the property owners and get hopefully get responses back.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I'd move that we go ahead and defer this to the time certain of July 12th.
Second.
To the commission, I don't know if that's a date. I know the attorney had requested a deferral. I don't know if he's agreeable to that time frame. I didn't know if he wanted to come up and address whether July 12th worked for him. He was the one who requested the deferral.
Just very briefly, I think one of the issues was whether or not the initial notice was received as well. So not just the notice of today's meeting, but the informal meeting. So I know there's a comprehensive process that this goes through, where cost estimates are presented to the public. I think that perhaps that informal meeting process has to occur again in order to really provide a fair process for this.
If the initial meeting is to get an estimate of the cost so people can have a ballpark within which to work, why wouldn't that be superseded by an actual cost that we have today?
Very good, I understand.
That just seems to me to be added bureaucracy. I mean, we're going very far to make sure that we don't impose anything.
Yes, sir, I do agree with what you're saying. That's logical. I guess one of the other issues, though, is this petition that was submitted and whether or not people realized what they were signing.
But everybody's going to have to re-sign something. So that, if that was something, it'll be cured in this process also. Okay. So everything you brought up will be cured by going through the process again.
Very good. That's all I was trying to ensure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To the chair, when you say going through the process again, would you simply just like to reopen this public hearing, schedule it for, defer it to, continue it, I'm sorry, to July 12th, or are you referring back, start the entire process all over again? No, I didn't think so. So
continue this
this public hearing. So the idea that
with Public Works staff sending notice to all the parcels with their actual cost and requesting a yes/no response.
Perfect. So with that motion, what we'll do is then reopen the public hearing that was closed and then continue that to July 12th if that's the vote of the board.
And that is the motion.
I think we're still open.
Yes.
Yeah. No, he closed it.
Oh, the public hearing was closed.
Oh, you did close?
Yes.
I have two questions.
Rich, when we send those, the new letters out, would we traditionally put, please respond by X date so they know it's a time certain response so we get them back?
In this particular case, yes.
Okay. And then secondly, with the fluctuating prices of millings more fluctuating upwards because they become more in demand, is this extension potentially get us out of a price lock estimate or anything with the millings material itself, or are we still probably good with the cost estimates?
The cost for this project will stay the same.
Okay.
Anything else, gentlemen? Oh, so we have a motion from Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Fleischer. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you very much.
And then we will thus open the public hearing back up and continue to July 12th.
open it up right now?
No.
Or
No,
on
so what
July
you're
12th?
opening it up and continuing it to that date?
You're going to pick up where we left off in the public hearing.
Yeah.
Opening up the public hearing, and we will now continue it at July 12th.
Thank you.
And I will close the public hearing.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, I think so.
We're just keeping the public hearing open till that date certain.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And with that, we'll take a 10-minute break. And during the break, I was told that there's a gentleman here who actually wanted to speak on item 8G, but wasn't clear on the process. So I'll ask if the board's indulgence to let him come on up and comment. Sir, come on up, please. If you would, state your name and address for the record, please, and give us your comments.
I'm Reverend Edward Spencer. My address is 3830 46th Street, Vero Beach, Florida. And I'm the Vice President of Gifford Youth Little League. And we just had some concerns about, our lease
Right.
that we had. And we're looking for some security in our lease. I mean, the lease states and it talks about we have a 5-year lease and then hereafter 3 consecutive 5 years. It says automatically, but after the automatically, if someone wanted to terminate the lease, or the county per se wanted to terminate the lease, it would happen. So that's no security for us. You know, we've been there for 30 years, 25 years, and with all these different entities and all these different leagues coming up now, it's very scary for us, you know, day to day, trying to do some things for our kids, trying to be there for our kids in our community, to worry about if tomorrow the county has decided now to allow someone else to come in and take over this lease. Or, I mean, not take over the lease, but take over the premises. So we're just asking for some security in this lease.
Reverend, Mr. Chairman. Reverend, and I appreciate your comments and concerns, but I have to say that you've been a great partner, and it's all about the kids.
Yes, sir.
It's all about the youth.
Yes, sir.
Staying on the field.
Yes, sir.
And the way the contract is set up, it's a no-cost contract, and basically, you're keeping the youth on the field, and that renewal is going to happen automatically. It's not a question of we're going to sit back and think, well, are they really playing good ball? No, that's not the key here. The key here is, has the fields been damaged? Have we had any failures? And we're not talking about not getting to home plate.
I understand.
I mean, again, let's keep it with the kids.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And a positive thing for the youth. You're not going anywhere. You've been here for a long time.
A long time, yes,
and
sir.
we've had a great relationship.
Yes, sir.
And we see no reason to make that change.
Okay.
And you know, your commitment to the kids and to the field is what's driven this contract to continue on.
Okay.
And you do have automatic renewal. I did speak with a few of the board members as
Yes, sir.
well.
Yes, sir.
And I wanted to reduce that fear that it's not a question of do we have another option coming
Yeah,
our way?
right.
Nobody's looking to explore another option. You're good stewards of the field. We have to be good stewards of the taxpayer dollar and the assets.
I understand.
And I think if we have that relationship, I don't think there's going to be a challenge, and I don't think we have a concern or a fear that this is going to another bowl team.
Okay. I appreciate it.
Did that answer you?
Yes, sir. I mean, I can
Yeah,
go back.
my personal commitment, because I enjoy seeing the youth on the field, as opposed to other places they might choose to be
Because it's
at.
beyond baseball. Baseball is just a tool for us. You know, baseball might be the primary for others, but it's GYLL is giving youth life lessons for us. So it's beyond baseball. And we want to make sure, you know, all our forefathers have worked hard for this, to keep this going on, and we're trying to keep it going on too. So I appreciate your help, and I appreciate that I can go back and let them know that we don't have anything to worry about. Okay?
Thank you very
I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Chair will entertain a motion.
We're going to
Approve it
continue
once,
on.
but
It's
I'm
been
happy to-
approved. We can
Happy to
reaffirm.
approve it again.
Move approval.
We move it approval. I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
It's reapproved. Good. We will, yep, exactly. Now I really feel whole.
Now it's in stone.
We will move on to public discussion items. We have a request to speak from Kenny Godfrey. All right, come on up, Mr. Godfrey.
One 13515 Street, Fellsmere, Florida. Kenny Godfrey. I'd like to know what y'all come up with about this road. Has there been anything hashed out between to get this matter straightened out?
I believe we do, and it looks like Stan's going to come on up. Stan, I believe your report had 3 alternatives. If you want to briefly go over them.
Sure. Again, for the record, Stan Bowling, Community Development Director. The last Thursday, I sent some information to Mr. Godfrey, then spoke on the phone with him Thursday afternoon. And this is after coordinating with Dylan Reingold and with Rich Spurka, the Public Works Director. Just a little bit of background. This is a 38-acre parcel I'm showing here that Mr. Godfrey owns and has owned for a number of years. And 99th Street is on the south end of his site. Babcock is on the west end, and 101st is on the north end. And he has built his home on this site, and also since around 2005, 2006, begun his mining operation, which was approved a number of years ago. And you can see the lake that's the result of the excavation area and some stockpiling area on the site. He has until 2022, that's the end of his mining operation, and this is his mining site, site access, his on-site haul road, leading out to 99th Street and connecting to Babcock. Now, in terms of going through the process, this has been a very long process for Mr. Godfrey. Applications actually going back to 1998, but kind of focusing in on the ones that are the most pertinent. This was the connection to 99th Street shown on the approved site plan from 2003 for his current mining operation. And that proposal from his engineer was approved. It's shown on the engineer's site plan. And that shows the 99th Street access improvements within the 40-foot Fellsmere Farms right-of-way. And that was the connection that was on the approved site plan. As Mr. Godfrey went through the process to actually get all the permits for doing the project in 2005, he received approval from county engineering for a right-of-way permit connection. And that connection met all the site plan requirements, but actually was shifted south of and outside of the Fellsmere Farms right-of-way. And so this was on the approved right-of-way permit from 2005. And it labels, again, this is provided by his project engineer, a 40-foot access and drainage easement, and all the improvements are shown in that, including, and this was a condition of the site plan approval Mr. Godfrey got, including a paved apron on to Babcock. This was the right-of-way permit itself, and it included some conditions for Mr. Godfrey to maintain his access along 99th Street to provide material when needed, to grade and water it, and so forth. Since your May 17th meeting, Public Works Director had engineering crews go out to actually look at the as-built situation out on the ground, and this is information overlaid on an aerial provided by county engineering staff, showing the location of the apron as-built. And again, the apron has been in place for more than 10 years now. And this is the access that has been used in the past for the mining operation, allowing two-way truck traffic on it. And it appears from the current as-built information that the apron and then the travelway itself encroach into the adjacent property to the south. And staff is not aware of, at this point in time, an actual 40-foot access easement in place, despite what was labeled on the 2005 design that was approved by engineering for the connection. But it appears that the travelway itself is perhaps 10 to 15 feet into the property, the adjacent property to the south, and a bit of the apron here. But again, for a number of years, this has worked fine in terms of the actual physical access to the site. And each year, county staff goes out to look at the mining operation, like all mining operations, to get their annual permit, and it's functioned fine for traffic up to the recent changes. Also, on May 17th, Mr. Godfrey, we obtained a copy of a recorded easement that he has based on that recorded easement across the property to the south, the adjacent property to the south. Again, 99th Street connection being here, Babcock here. He has an easement in place and appears to have the rights to build an alternate access connection across the adjacent property to the south and to Babcock. It's separated from 99th Street a good distance, a bit over 200 feet, and that would meet the separation distance. And Public Works has verified that that connection could be approved if it were built and constructed. And then last week, we also obtained from the project engineer, Randy Mosby, at one point in time, and there were many versions of plans that showed different connections over the years, different alternatives for various reasons, and including one plan that used this kind of southern connection there. But in the end, and I'm going to go back to the original, the current aerial, which is, I think, from January of this year. Essentially, the options, as staff sees it, is that Mr. Godfrey could obtain or show that he has an easement or rights to use the existing improvements, which have worked well for over 10 years, in working with the property owner to the south, whether that's a means of, say, trading out the recorded easement he has for a new easement for the actual improvements here or not. That's between private property owners. Another potential solution would be to shift the existing roadway, and I'll go now to the actual as-built improvements to show you, to shift the improvements north completely within the Fellsmere Farms right-of-way and essentially shift the connection out of the property to the south. I think one of the big issues there is it appears that Fellsmere Farms Water Control District has a rule that for the improvement in this location, they would require some significant upgrades in culverting along the north side here of their right-of-way and connection to Babcock. So that could be a very costly option. Again, if Fellsmere Farms applies a rule that we've been informed of.
Stan, wouldn't that put him inside that circle or that loop of prohibited access within a certain number of feet of a residence?
Actually, I think what would happen here is once that 300 foot from occupied structure rule applies to the on-site haul road, once he gets off his site onto 99th Street, that circle, that arc actually doesn't apply.
Oh, say that one more time.
That 300 foot rule is 300 feet from an occupied structure, and that's what this arc here is showing. That applies to on-site activities such as a stockpile, but also an on-site haul road. Once he gets off that haul road, off his site onto a street such as 99th Street,
okay,
that doesn't apply. But I can tell you, it's very close anyway in looking at the arc, and in fact, the 2003 site plan approval had that type of configuration. So we know that that one can work. But again, our understanding is if Fellsmere Farms applies an upgrade rule they have for certain lengths of culverts, if they do apply that rule, it could be very costly for Mr. Godfrey. I think so that's the other option, to shift north, and then the other one would be to actually build in the easement that he already has for an alternative here across the property to the south, obviously impacting quite a bit of the area of the property to the south. But again, he does, based on the documentation he gave us, have the right to do that, and at least at one time had a plan from his engineer to do that improvement. So, the kind of the most obvious answer would be, easiest thing would be if he can work with the property owner to the south to go ahead and get approval, at least for the remaining life of the mine, which is until 2022.
Okay, Stan, if I could, just because these things sometimes get a little fuzzy or confusing to me, I want to reiterate what I take to be your 3 recommendations, and correct or clarify me as I go.
Sure.
There seems to be one possibility which basically goes similar to where the traffic's going now, but would require some land in the form of an easement from the neighbor to the south so that you can build the exit road a little bit further to the south and make that a going road.
That's correct. In other words, go back to what worked for 10 years.
So going to the neighbor and trade out the platted easement or whatever for a new short strip along the road.
However he can work that out with
The
that
second
property.
one is we have a recorded easement from the neighbor, and he could build the new road over that recorded easement.
Correct.
And the third one is to shift the improvements to the north so that the road could then go just a little 10 or so feet to the north and then out.
That's correct. Those are the 3 options.
But that one, because of some piping, would be particularly expensive.
That's what we believe, yes.
Thank you. Any questions of staff?
I have well, some of them are comments, some of them might be questions. I talked with traffic engineering just to get an idea of the truck traffic on the 300-foot rule away from a residence. 42% of northbound and 41% of southbound traffic is being measured as truck traffic. And at what point do we say something's a truck route versus a normal street when you're 40+% of the traffic is deemed to be trucking? And also the 300-foot property we're trying to stay away from, in a visit I had back there not that long ago, seems to be a fabrication of airboats. We all get the emails from the person up in North County that sends us about the boat repairs, and it had that same similar smell to the air of fiberglass resins and that type of stuff. So at what point does that residence become a business with a resident caretaker of the business versus reverse a residence with a approved business? And I don't know.
They're 2 different.
They're different, but it seems like the use is more business, but they are living there.
Right.
But another distinction is that this is a more rural area versus a more urban area.
Right.
And I don't know if we want to start making all the requirements for rural areas the same as urban areas.
Right. Yeah, just 2 comments on that. One is, I'm not aware of a particular numerical threshold that would cause, it depends on who's classifying it as to whether it's a truck route. Obviously, the data is what it is,
right.
and there are a number of trucks that use this area, this stretch of Babcock. The 300-foot distance from an occupied structure, my understanding is the structure is still occupied, and the requirement is actually, was it occupied at the time of the application for laying out the design. And there is a grandfathered-in business that's been the subject of code enforcement there. There's some code enforcement fines have been assessed from time to time as the scale has kind of gotten out of hand. Nonetheless, it is an occupied structure, and really I think the difficulty all along going through the site plan process for years that Mr. Godfrey went through, as you can see from the aerial here, even though it's an agriculturally zoned area, there are residences all around the perimeters. So it was difficult for Mr. Godfrey to find something that met that 300-foot requirement. And that 300-foot requirement is something that comes into play even with existing operations. The type of dust that can come from an on-site haul road, which is never paved, is part of the reason for that, to keep the on-site haul road at least 300 feet from an occupied structure, even if that structure is, a residence, but also a welding barn or what have you in this case.
And if I can add, I mean, we have to keep in mind two things. One is that this is not just for this area. I mean, the 300 foot is for the whole county.
Correct, yes.
And so, I mean, we always have to keep that in mind. And I, just about 3-4 weeks ago, got a call from a mine owner who's wanted to work out a slightly different route, which was probably a better route, because the shooting club was complaining continuously about the dust and dirt from his trucks going down the road. I mean, we have a lot of difficulties. And if you think you want to cut the distance of 300 feet along 82nd Avenue and put it 250 feet from Suzanne Fransky's house, let me know. I mean, but I mean.
I know.
Yeah. So
we had to come up with a policy that's county-wide, but you may have some circumstances or sites that you apply the same rule to that
has some hardship to.
Yes. Secondly, in looking back, since this has been in operation for about 10 years, and we thought it was in the right place, he thought it was in the right place, he had it built in what we all thought was the right place. Since it's been there for that amount of time, does he have any ability of, is it adverse possession, or that if you occupy and use something and it's there and functional? And I know we inspected it, but we never knew until the owner to the south, or the tenant of the owner to the south, put the dirt blocking it, saying that portion was in their piece.
And I'll let the county attorney weigh in on that, but I'd just say that based on the approved right-of-way permit drawing, there was the assumption that the label on the drawing was correct, a 40-foot access easement. So there was not a question in terms of that, in staff's mind, I don't believe, but in terms of adverse possession.
And on top of that, I mean, that'd be essentially an issue between Mr. Godfrey and the adjacent property owner.
Correct.
Not really a place for us to kind of insert ourselves into whether he's got an adverse possession claim or not.
Okay, right, that would not be something that would involve us, unless, is there any other copies of the 40-foot that was in question? Is there another document maybe that we don't have that you have, or whether it's recorded?
I want to state something. Last week, Chris Moore was sitting right over and said, not only do we have a 40-foot right-of-way, we got an additional 40-foot right-of-way. Let me tell y'all, I objected to this, me building a road over there from the get-go. Because if I don't own it, what am I building a road over there for? Chris Moore had to move a telephone pole out of that over there to make it where you had the 20-foot wide road, plus I had to put in a swale, plus I had to put in drainage and everything. Do you think I would go over there and build a road in a piece of land that I don't own and try to hoodwink y'all, then hide it for 10 years? They knew dang well where this road was from day one. That old print that they got from Randy Mosby, don't that say 320 linear feet of 48-inch pipe in that ditch, Stan? The one you just put up there?
Right.
It's so small you can't see it. The one you're using that you say Randy Mosby gave you?
Are you talking about this one?
Yeah, don't that say 320 foot of linear pipe in that ditch? Of 48-inch concrete pipe? Ain't that the one you sent me?
Well, I sent you all the drawings that I showed here.
Okay, well, let me tell you, Rodney Tillman won't even let you put 320 foot of pipe in that ditch. So that's void and null. That piece of paper there, throw it in the garbage, because that was never on my radar or y'all's. Like I'm trying to tell you, Chris Moore just told you the other day, not only do they got 40-foot right-of-way with the water district, we got an additional 40-foot right-of-way.
Where's that? Help me, okay, and I'm sorry for interrupting, but I just need to.
I don't know where he got that from, but he knew all along that I was going to build that road where that road is, okay? How do you people come and inspect that pit for 10 years and thinking that that road is in the ditch, and the ditch has been there for 10 years? Does that make sense? Now, I'm going back to what I was telling everybody. Babcock is a truck route. Y'all can blow smoke to anybody you want to. I live there, I see it. I chose to live in agriculture district, okay? The man right next to me, Sid Benek, sprays my house with pesticides. Airplanes fly over my house and spray my house with pesticide. When you choose to live in an agricultural zoned area, you got to put up with truck traffic, tractors, spray, everything. And not only 5 days a week, this is 7 days a week, okay? So if a man can spray your house with pesticides 7 days a week, I don't think a truck driving out in front of somebody's house, you know, once I get to Babcock, I drive within 30 feet of these houses that they got this big deal about, okay? Okay, I'm going to get to that road one way or another, and I'm going to drive in front of that house within 30 feet. Why should you only make Kenny Godfrey stay 300 feet when everybody else's truck can drive within 30 feet? That don't seem fair, okay? But I'm going to tell you this right now. Nobody ever thought that road was in that ditch, because the first time they came there to inspect it, you know what they'd have said? The road ain't where the ditch is because the ditch is still there, okay? Now back to the landowner, the guy that I had the agreement with in the right-of-way through there, okay? He's got in his mind that if we close this road, that people's gonna buy this right-of-way, okay? And it ain't him, it's the guy that supposedly leases the place, okay? You know, I forget his name, I don't even wanna say his name, okay? Let me tell you, back to the going into the fish farm and coming out, I got paperwork telling me you can't do that.
Do what?
You can't drive through that fish farm from the county, okay? That makes a 3 driveway rule that you're breaking. So that's why we went back to this other thing.
Why are we saying that he can't drive that easement?
I don't know that we are.
Yeah, they are. I got the paperwork. And let me tell you, ask them about their rule about a 3 driveway thing. It's 1 driveway when you come out of your pit. It's another driveway when you cross into the fish farm. And then it's another driveway when you turn and go to Babcock. They turned that down after they made me go in there and kind of made me believe I could do it. So I went in there and bought the right-of-way. I built the road. I got it recorded. I got it surveyed. And then that wasn't enough. Then I had to go to the city and beg their forgiveness to be able to come through there, you know.
So that's in the city of Fellsmere city limits on the south side of your
property?
property?
Yeah, but they finally, see, all this was a can of worms because my competition's attorney was Warren Dell. Warren Dell was sent down to every meeting to fight me, okay? But the city council wasn't sending him. It was the mayor at the time, Bob Baker, that I didn't get along with. So it was all retaliation, a bunch of, I can't say what it is.
I remember.
So I want to tell you right now, Kenny Godfrey ain't giving up. You should have let me build the road on my own property, went straight out to Babcock. That ain't a residence over there. That's a damn business. It's in an agriculture district. Go back to what I told you. I live there now. If a man can spray my house with pesticides, fly over my house with an airplane and spray me, and there ain't nothing I can do to it, you think this little dust that they blow up about trucks and all that, all them roads out there are dirt roads.
Kenny, here's the problem. Here's the problem is we're trying to create an ordinance that is as fair across the board. There's other mines, particularly on 82nd Avenue, where there at one point was a mobile home. And that mobile home, there was a bridge right across from that mobile home that was functional. They could have used that to bring the dirt out and that kind of stuff. But because of this ordinance, they had to go down and build about a $300,000 bridge and to go across the Ranch Road Canal. And that's not your problem, that's their problem, but that problem was created because of the ordinance that's biting you right now.
Yeah, well,
Now,
hey,
hold
let me
on.
tell you, I jumped every hoop y'all had. I got open, you approved it. I've been there for 10 years. Now we're going to come back and you're going to try to shut me down.
And that's where I see the issue. And I guess really that you have done everything that our ordinance required in order to be in business until such time as the tenant of the property to the south of you decided to no longer allow whatever has been happening on that piece of property for 10 years. Now, we've got 2 different options here. One of them is for you to take him to court, or the other one is was the county, did we ever run a grader down that road? And that's what I don't know.
They ran that grader down that road for 10 years. I came over here to Mr. Baird
Okay,
for 10 years to try to get y'all from tearing my road up and you made me build.
With that said, we have in the past along Powerline Road used the maintenance easement. And that's basically, I think there's a 7-year period in there, and I'm not playing lawyer, but help me with this a little bit.
The key part of the maintenance process or maintenance map process under the Florida statutes is that we have regularly maintained and repaired for the immediate past 7 years. So the question is going to be, can we go back from 7 years from now that we as the county have maintained that strip? And
Rich
I think
has been on the job for 2 days. Maybe he can answer that question.
the information I had from Road and Bridge is that there actually was a period of time And Rich, correct me if I've got wrong on the dates. It was either 2012 to 2014 where we had stopped maintaining a portion of that road, but Rich, come to.
Rich Berger, Public Works Director. That's correct. Because of this issue, I had Road and Bridge go back and look into service requests to see if there was a time when Public Works did not maintain this section of roadway. What I found is in 2012, Chris Moore directed Road and Bridge not to grade 99th Street. That lasted until June of 2014 based on the documentation I received from Road and Bridge. They were directed by a written request. And there is also emails from residents who requested that the road be graded, and it was replied that the Road and Bridge was directed not to maintain it. So these are records we have on file.
Who asked for it not to be maintained?
I'd have to look at the emails on Chris Moore. I believe Kenny and Chris Moore had a conversation, and that's where this came by. I can't tell you. I don't have documentation on it.
That's because we weren't doing it right or something.
Okay,
Well,
Mr.
let me
Godfrey,
tell you
Mr.
something.
Godfrey, if you'd sit down for a minute, I've got other people wanting to speak. We'll let you speak again. Commissioner O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Stan, you just explained that the whole point of the 300-foot buffer is because of the on-site, it's usually a dirt road, and we want to have a 300-foot buffer from the dirt road to a residence. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So could we allow Mr. Godfrey to build his road on his property, and once he hits that 300-foot line, the remaining distance to Babcock has to be paved? So it's a dirt road up to the 300-foot limit and then paved from there on. Would that be something we could craft to meet the intent of the 300-foot buffer, but have a resolution here?
I think that would be an option that you could put into the ordinance. Again, we've got a setback that's established in the ordinance, and we don't have a way other than changing the ordinance to put that sort of thing into effect. But that would be an alternative you could, if you did an ordinance amendment, to build in.
Also,
just throw that out for consideration.
How much pavement are we talking about?
Well, it depends on how far north Kenny wants to go, but if it probably wouldn't be much from how I'm reading this.
Yeah, go back to the circle. And
It depends on where you're talking about there. Again, I don't really seem to have a cursor here, but if you were to extend going due, thank you. If you extend going due west, you might not have enough separation distance from the 99th Street intersection there. So you kind of probably have to go further to the north. Now, Mr. Godfrey does have.
So he's got to be separated from 99th Street?
He has a certain separation distance, and I believe, I can't speak for Public Works, but I believe it's on the order of 230
Well, never
feet.
mind then.
I think, and again, access is an issue. There are a number of occupied structures, but if you were to go where Mr. Godfrey's existing driveway further to the north, if you see it up there toward the top, it's kind of tree lined right now, but it's a little bit further down that goes straight over to Babcock there. You can see an occupied residence right across from there, so you would have to go, according to the plans, it looks like on the order of 150 feet east of Babcock to get out of the 300-foot arc for that driveway itself.
Mr. Speaker, you want to say something?
The separation distance from 99th would be 225 feet.
Thank you. Commissioner Zorc?
yes, in lieu of also this idea of the paving, I think it's the trucks with the dust is what I call the undercarriage dust. It's not necessarily the dust from the load on the truck. Now, I could be wrong on that, but I've seen a number of places for dust management where they'll have, I call it a little, it's like a 6-inch water trough that they drive through that takes the dust and dirt and kind of dries things or wettens it up so that the dust no longer becomes an issue. So along with either millings or pavings or other means of managing dust is really what we're trying to get to. And I just want to leave the door open if there's a better way to do it than paving, or maybe a combination thereof, because paving can add up in the expense side.
I would caution against the dust management route, only because we've tried that for years, 82nd Avenue being one. And again, when it works, it works. When it doesn't work, we get the phone calls. It didn't work recently at Waterway Village, east of 51st Court.
Okay.
500 feet from occupied residence, and actually the project had to be shut down for a few days while they focused their resources on managing that on-site haul road. So it's an issue that we'd really like to avoid. So I think paving, I don't know if millings is also an option that would keep down the dust or not, but it would have to be something that would not require maintenance. And again, we're looking till, at this point, July of 2022 for Mr. Godfrey's mining approval.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Davis.
Kenny, I'm assuming that you have talked to the property owner, not the tenant. And have you asked the property owner, not the tenant, if he would grant, if there's any way y'all could swap easements to get rid of the easement that you currently have recorded? It seemed like there would be some benefit to the property owner to have a release from you of the easement that goes further south of the intersection.
Well, let me tell you, the property owner ain't never told me he had a problem with me driving out the road I'm on.
Well,
it's always the other guy.
Okay, and that's what I guess really it does appear to me, from what I'm hearing from Public Works and Legal, that the option of a maintenance agreement, because we stopped doing it, we've got documentation that we stopped doing it, that was the easiest way for this board to help you, in my opinion. I don't know that I'd had 3 votes for it, but at least it was an option that we had. Looking at it right now, the only option that we have is really to try to help you get with the property owner somehow, not the tenant. And I think prudence would suggest that that property owner ask for a release of that easement that you have that's recorded and exchange it for, even if it's only an easement to last until the 2022, which can be done, but it accomplishes the mission. But I'm running out of areas where I'm, other than changing the ordinance, and I don't know that I'm in favor of changing the ordinance, because I don't know that if I was faced with a haul route coming directly out in front of my house, it's one of those things that I'd have to really kind of look at, that I don't know that I'd be in favor of, even at the end of the day, but if we did the public hearings and everything.
Let me tell you something. If you people would have told me that you did, I got paperwork where y'all are claiming 99th. If you'd have told me at the time you made me build a road where y'all said you owned it, at the time, I would have got a right-of-way permit from this guy, right? You know, an easement through there. But you didn't tell me that. Y'all acted like you owned it, and that's where you wanted it built, okay? So that's why, before this even came into play, the other one that I went that got the right-of-way going through there, okay? You see, I got one from him, right? All right. But if you'd have told me that I also needed one for this, then I would have already got it before this tenant got him all mad. But let me tell you, whatever he said in 2020, whatever he just said that I'm going to be done, I ain't sure I'll be done then, so I'm going to put myself in a box.
I'll get you. Let me ask you a question. Did he get the automatic extension like the rest of the pits in the county due to the economic recession?
He did. Yes, he did.
So you got your 10-year extension, or 7 years? I think it was a 7 years.
Yeah, I think it was less than 10.
Yeah, I think everybody blanket countywide got the extension, so that's where the 22 comes from.
Correct.
And then after that, what is his options as far as a pit extension?
He could apply for a new site plan approval and meet the requirements in place at that time.
At which time?
2022.
So that means he'd have to meet the new mining requirements?
That's correct.
Yeah, you're done by 22.
I don't think I am.
It's going to be.
I'll need it, don't
I
worry.
get what you're saying, but I'm just saying.
But I'm not going to put myself in a box, because y'all are the people that led me to believe you own 99th right away. Don't think a man's going to take his wallet out and do all that work in something that y'all told him to go do it there. So y'all really put me in this box about what you're saying, because let me go back to the other one. I got the paperwork that says going through the fish farm, you can't do that. That's a 3-driveway connection, and it don't fit in y'all's ordinance. So that was off the map. I'll get the paperwork and give it back to you. It's in that box over there, but there's about 79,000 papers over there. But I'm going to tell you, Kenny Godfrey don't forget stuff. When you live it, you remember it. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to go back to what I'm telling you before. These people that are running this welding factory over there, their rights shouldn't supersede mine.
It's not theirs. It's the resident. If that residence wasn't there, That's what is getting you. It's not the welding. It's that there's a residence out front. Even though it might not be somebody that owns it, lives there, they could be tenants, it doesn't matter. There's a residence within that 300-foot arc, and it's not the welding shop that has anything to do with this. And
Do you think for 1 minute I'd build a road on something that wasn't allowed, that if y'all didn't tell me you owned it, do you think I'd sneak over there and do it?
The only thing I can say to that is up until 2012, until we have record of the maintenance of that road, there was an answer.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you, they ain't never stopped grading that road. They can tell you they did, because I've been down there 100 times trying to get y'all off that road. Because if you read, I got to grade it in the morning, I got to grade it at night, I got to water it, and I have to provide the fill to keep it nice and flat. Well, the reason I kept coming down here and raising so much heck is because y'all were stealing the material off the road, and then I had to come back and fix it.
Kenny, but if we go to court, we file this, I believe I could win against the county by just simply saying, show me the emails where y'all said y'all stopped.
Yeah.
And that would be enough to, I mean, I'm not trying to play lawyer, but I think I could win that one.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen, y'all had to move a telephone pole out of the middle of this where the road is now. So why would y'all move a telephone pole for me to put a road if it never was supposed to be there? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I get it. I do.
And there is another way out, but I didn't want to bring this up yet. The house in the center is not occupied right now. That lady died. Do you know what I'm talking about? There's 3 houses, Stan knows. 1, 2, 3. The center house is not occupied. So what are you going to tell me now? Go over there and build me a road there, and then when somebody comes in there, move my road? You know, this is crazy. I done did everything you told me to do, and now you're coming out there telling me to do more. You can't do this to a small business. You've actually shut me down what's been going on here, you know, no matter what y'all think. And Kenny can drive out what's there until he's 140, what's still there. You know, that there's still enough there, okay? Y'all created this problem, not Kenny. My road should have been built on my property, okay? Forget that 300 setback thing. You should have found a way for me to come out right there beside my right-of-way, put my road in. I don't think the people in the welding factory will object to my road being over there, okay?
And you're
If you'd
probably
go
right,
ask 'em.
Kenny. The difference is when you say the right and everything like that, a mine is not a right. You don't just have a right to a mine because you're in an agricultural zone piece of property. It's a special exception.
Well, I have a
Or
right
permitted
because
use.
you gave me a special exception to open, and I've been there for 10 years.
That's true, but those special exceptions with the criteria included that 300-foot arc. And so, that's why you're where you are today. It's not because it's a right, it's because you met the special criteria of which the county put in place. You're still meeting that criteria with the exception of the width of the driveway coming in, of which I don't have an answer for. And unless you can find something that says that the equivalent of that easement that you have, that recorded document that says something about a 40-foot swath on the south end.
Well, go back and listen to your tape when Chris Morris said, not only do we got 40 foot from the water district, we got additional 40 foot. So 40 plus Florida makes 80, don't it?
And I agree with you. I remember seeing that, but nobody can back anything up.
Well,
just
that's what he told me all along. That's why the road's built there. That's why you moved the telephone pole. That's why I got a right-of-way permit. You know, y'all misled me. I didn't mislead you. And I did what you told me to do.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question maybe of Stan on how many houses are there on 99th Street east of Babcock? Because I know with the dirt that's piled on the road for emergency services egress, I'm trying to think of a way to temporarily get the road open beyond the area in question, but on your aerial, or maybe Kenny, you know, how many people are further east?
It wouldn't matter if there's 1 or 100, and the reason why is because on the south side of the canal on 99th Street, east of Babcock, all of it's about 10 foot wide as far as right-of-way that's owned by Fellsmere Water Control District. So you have that same problem right on Babcock that goes all the way back to the east. So it doesn't matter if there's none or 100, it's still the same 10-foot wide swath of property.
Right, and east of Mr. Godfrey's site, it looks like there are 6 homes till you get to 134th Community Road, which is to the east of his site.
Okay. But but again, it's just the same narrow strip all the way down.
All right.
Are we done with this one, gentlemen? We will move on now to Fellsmere Roads, County Administrator Matters. Mr. Baird.
Yes, the commission had requested that we have a meeting out in Fellsmere regarding the Fellsmere roads. And what we're trying to do is get it on everyone's calendar. We did get and also have a notice. It was a workshop. we've contacted Fellsmere, and I think basically the dates that Jason Nunemaker, the Fellsmere city manager, has recommended we use the auditorium because it seats more people. And the dates that we couldn't use it would be Friday, June 10th, and the evening of June 16th, June 21st, and June 22nd. Other than that, he said the auditorium is available. So we just wanted to make sure we could get it calendar with the commission, and so as we can have Dory get the notice out.
Okay, and just briefly, are we looking towards the middle or the later part of June?
Give me those one more time. Ben, pass me. Give me those dates again that are out.
Friday, June 10th, June 16th, June 21st, and June 22nd.
Okay, I'm going to go open it up with two possible dates, Thursday the 23rd or Tuesday the 28th, where there's no commission meeting.
Actually, on that 20th FAC.
Yeah.
Okay, that 28th is out, go to the 23rd.
June 22nd, you said, or no, 23rd, Thursday?
Thursday the 23rd. Thursday the 23rd going once.
I
Oh,
would probably have a conflict there.
Okay.
And this would be a day, evening?
Probably evening. It's been requested to do it in the
Yeah, I think the residents, would appreciate an evening, I'm sure.
Commissioner O'Brien, you say the 23rd, wow.
How about Monday, the 20th?
I could make that work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the notice rule?
Well,
we should be fine, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's only the 7th. I see some residents from Fellsmere here. I don't know whether or not they have a chance to check their calendar or whatever. It's good. All right.
Okay.
What, 5 o'clock or 5:30?
What time are we looking at?
Yeah, 5:30 would probably be good. Well,
let's make it 6.
Okay.
We may be there a while, so you...
Yeah, it's going to be past my bedtime.
6 sounds good to me, too.
Oh.
Okay, 6 o'clock on the 20th of June.
Yep.
Going once, going twice, 6 o'clock the 20th of June it is.
I guess that,
You know,
I mean, really,
better auctioneering before there, Mr. Chairman, just so you know.
Well,
But I get about as much as
competing with a
Wesley does too,
professional
so.
auctioneer.
I know we can meet the timing of it. Do we have enough time to, do you want to send out notices to people? What sort of?
I don't think we can.
communications?
What we'll do is we'll make I don't know how we send notices out in that time frame.
What kind of notice do we need to send out?
I mean,
We need to advertise it so it's in the sunshine.
How about
Yeah.
Monday, the 27th, at the same time, 6 PM? For me, I mean, I don't care how late I stay up, but I'll at least not have to try to chair a meeting on the next day.
Oh, that's a
And
good
that'll give
point.
us another week for notice.
Well, I mean, Mr. Chairman, the mayor's here, maybe he can have some input as far as notification. Mr. Mayor, perhaps maybe we can,
27th is fine with me also.
okay.
Monday, June 27th?
Yep.
Joel
22nd.
Tyson, 22 North Mulberry Street, Fellsmere. We can get notices out, that's not a problem.
Okay.
We just go around door to door, we can put a flyer out. That's what we did when we had that one meeting out there, Wesley.
And Joe, one thing that I want to try to get accomplished is to actually try to, in advance of that, is to have the commissioners go out and see the roads that are maintained, the roads that are not maintained, and then in the 3 different areas, and just kind of get a good sense of what's going on out there. So perhaps the best thing for us to do is let's go ahead and move it to the 27th.
Right.
That gives us enough time for you and your ad hoc, no, I'm not going to call it a committee because there's no sunshine issues, but just your organization to meet with
property owners.
Yeah, to property owners to meet with and show them, that the rhyme and reason between graded roads and non-graded roads, there isn't any. So I think that would give us the most amount of time for y'all to drive that point home with everybody.
Well, I'd like for you to come out there right after a rainstorm.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
I don't think we got enough rain out there last night to make a difference, but when we have these heavy rains,
It was
it's
bad
just
enough.
almost
John Luke
impossible.
called me complaining about 109th, so we're.
Hey, while I'm up here, I got a question. You're talking about liability. How would taking on additional streets be more liable than the ones that you're already doing?
Just another
Would
spot
it
for
come
somebody
under the
running off the
same
road.
blanket?
Yeah, I mean, it's just more opportunity.
Okay, right, okay, that answers that. Okay, we do appreciate you all coming out and taking the time to doing this, because I think it is an issue and it needs to be looked at, so.
And this is the auditorium of the old school building? Okay, and Joe, if we can get this on the website as soon as possible, just to start the notification of it there.
We
So-
will.
You want to bump it to the 27th?
Yeah, June 27th at 6 o'clock at the old schoolhouse auditorium in Fellsmere.
And we do have a sound system in there. The Frog Lake Festival last year, they bought a sound system to go in the auditorium.
Okay,
So
super.
I think we can accommodate you.
All right.
Very good.
And you probably, Joe, if you talk to Jason, however you want the thing set up, if you want a kind of a portable dais set up on the stage, we'd be more than happy to do that, however you want to do it.
We're in communication with Jason.
Right.
We were yesterday.
Okay.
Should have thought of you. I called Jason. We called Jason. I should have also called you. I apologize.
Okay.
Is the 22nd a possibility, or?
Are you bad with the 27th?
I just have to juggle a few things. I mean, the 22nd is,
Yeah, but I think they were.
So the
they didn't have it for the
22nd.
22nd booked.
oh, the 22nd was booked, that's
Yeah,
right. That was
yeah,
the other
yeah.
objection.
I mean, the 27th is okay for,
Or the
Shoot for the 23rd.
Joel, I hear that you guys have hot hors d'oeuvres at your meetings. Will we have those at this meeting?
Pastries?
Have what?
Hot hors d'oeuvres.
Yes, we don't normally do that with a workshop, but we can talk to Susan. I'm serious. We can do that.
I tell you, the last meeting I had out there, it was hot, yes.
Commissioner, there's going to be over 500 people at this meeting. I don't know if they can have that kind of accommodation.
I'm sure they can.
Because I know that the mayor does an excellent job with notifications.
Right. Yes, we'll get the word out. That part's easy. Well, you're talking about hors d'oeuvres. There's one family, couple that comes out there, they used to call ahead to see what we were having. The guy was going to take his wife out to dinner, and he wanted to come out, so.
Thank you for leaving my name out of it.
Are we going with the 27th still, or are we switching to the 23rd?
Are we still with the 27th?
Yeah.
27th, 6
That's
PM,
locked in.
Fellsmere Old School Auditorium.
6 o'clock,
All right.
okay. We'll get the word out. That will
good.
not be a problem.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Joel.
We've already done the Community Development Job Grant application. We now move to the Office of Management Budget Tourist Development Council Budget Recommendations. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning. For the record, Michael Smykowski, Budget Director. This item relates to funding requests in TDC for marketing and promotion. On May 11th, 2016, the Tourist Development Council met to review requests that were submitted for fiscal year 2016-17 in the marketing and promotions category. I'm happy to report, based on available funding and after consideration, all requests submitted to the Tourist Development Council were recommended for funding by the Tourist Development Council. And at this point, staff recommends board approval of said funding requests that were outlined in your agenda item in Table 1. There are 6 organizations that would receive funding: the Indian River County Chamber of Commerce and Sebastian Chamber of Commerce, the Treasure Coast Sports Commission, the Cultural Council, Vero Heritage, the Indian River County Historical Society, and the Florida Archery Foundation, totaling $786,153, and staff recommends approval.
Any questions of Mike? Chair will entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion from, okay. We have a motion from Commissioner O'Brien, second from Commissioner Davis. Anybody in the audience? I'm sorry, Commissioner Fletcher. Anybody from the audience care to speak on this item? Anybody from the audience? Commissioner O'Brien.
Just one comment. The Florida Archery Foundation, this is the first time they've gotten funding. And I think several of us attended the open house they had a few months back, and I was shocked just to hear what a big draw they are with what they're doing. They're like one of 4 training centers in the country that are certified to do the archery training they do, and they bring people in from all over the country to come there. And in addition to that, they were running programs with autistic kids and some of the kids in substance abuse and awareness programs. So it was really impressive. And it was like, who knew they were doing all this until they had that open house. So I'm glad that the TDC recommended funding them a little bit, to get an event going, because I think it is a great benefit to the community, and just kind of glad to see a new face in the crowd as well. So I think it's excellent that's in there.
Yes, sir. And at the meeting, the Tourist Development Council members, since that would be a new funding request for that organization, they were very interested in data related to heads in bed, so to speak, and the extent to which they could document the draw from their activities during the course of the year.
I think it's a good option to include them here.
And as Mike says, there was great debate, and in the end, after the presentation, it was clear that they will be able to provide us with that information. They know their feet is to the fire. It's only $5,000. And then we were also reminded that the Fellsmere Frog Lake Festival started with $5,000, and it has been such a great success. We looked at many of the plans and also their past involvement, and yes, it was an unsung event. All the things they're doing for therapy and education. And simply stated, we compared it to, there are other archery ranges out there, but this is a proactive plan, and they will be tracking their hotel accommodation attendance, because they want to be able to prove themselves for the future year. Thank you.
Thank you. We have the motion from Commissioner Fleischer, second by Commissioner Davis. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you
you.
very much, Michael. We move on to county attorney matters. The first one is the Fourth Amendment to an interlocal agreement with Palm Beach County Health Facilities Authority for financing and refinancing for improvements and additions of facilities. Mr. Reingold.
Thank you very much. Back in 1996, the Board of County Commissioners entered into an interlocal agreement with the Palm Beach County Health Facilities Authority, authorizing the authority to use revenue bonds for financing several healthcare facilities, including 2 in Indian River County, Indian River Estates East and Indian River Estates West. The authority is also using money in the 3 projects in Palm Beach County. Since then, in 1998, 2006, and in 2010, the interlocal agreement has been amended to allow for additional financing for improvements at these 5 projects. The authority has come back to the board seeking a 4th amendment to the interlocal agreement, which will allow the issuance of revenue bonds for refunding previous bonds and for financing at the 5 facilities. I know the applicant and the attorneys representing the authority are here. The county attorney's office recommends approval of the resolution as presented, and also recommends approval of the interlocal agreement. I'm here for any questions.
Any questions of Mr. Reingold?
Move staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner O'Brien, second by Commissioner Fleischer. Anybody from the public want to address this? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0.
Thank you very much.
One comment on Indian River Estates. If you look at that facility, the number of people it employs, the tax revenue that's generated, and just some great folks that live out there. I do have a extended relative, not as many as the Davis's side, but that does reside out there, and they just love it, and it's a great asset for our community. I'm really glad to have them here.
I'll second all Commissioner Zork's remarks and move on to item B. School District Resolution directing county to place a referendum on the primary election ballot.
Thank you very much. The second item, pursuant to Section 1011.73 Florida statutes, the school board passed a resolution on May 31st directing the Board of County Commissioners to call for an election in conjunction with the August 30th primary for the electors of the school district to vote on a millage of 0.5 mils for school operations for the fiscal years 2017-18 through 2020-21. Before you today is a proposed resolution calling for that referendum and also directing the supervisor of elections to conduct that referendum election on August 30th, 2016, as was requested by the school board. Simply, the county attorney's office recommends that you approve the resolution as presented. I believe there are representatives from the school board who are here to answer any questions.
Thank you. I have a couple questions.
I do
If
too.
Mr. Rendell might come up. I'll let Commissioner Davis go first. Thank you. Name and address for the record, please.
Mark Rendell, proud resident of Vero Beach, Florida, 1460 West 56th Square, 32966.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Davis.
Dr. Rendell, thank you for coming down. And my question is the county's looking at our 1 cent optional sales tax, but we opted to do it in November when we anticipate a larger turnout to get as much, I guess you can say, either as much of the voice of the people as we possibly can. What was the thoughts behind the August 30th timeframe for the school board?
Typically, the reason for that is that we wanted to get the news, the good news or the bad news, as soon as possible. This impacts our budget for the 17-18 school year. So if the news was not favorable in August, that would give us the most amount of time to start planning for any budgetary impact for that 17-18 school year.
And what do you anticipate a $500,000 generating for the school district?
Between $8 and $9 million a year. So that's a significant budgetary impact if we were to lose that funding.
And when you say lose that funding, it's currently in place?
Correct. We currently have the support of the community with a 0.6 discretionary property tax millage, yielding about that amount of money right now. And based on the property tax appraisals for the future, we thought it would be fiscally prudent to reduce the millage to 0.5. So we currently have a 0.6 millage that will be expiring, and so we're asking the voters for continued support in the form of a 0.5.
And that will expire next year?
Correct, June 30th, 2017. So it's a 0.6 right now, based on the increasing property tax values. To maintain the same funding stream, we could reduce to a 0.5.
And so what year was that approved? It seems like it was just the other day, but I guess it didn't.
2012.
Yeah.
Okay.
2012.
Wasn't as long as my mind went. Okay, I feel better, thanks.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to follow up on something Commissioner Davis did. I mean, evidently this just passed a week ago at the board, at the school board. And you're going to have it on the August 30th ballot.
Correct.
How do you intend to get the word out to the citizens during the summer when people are out of school and stuff so that they actually know it's on the ballot?
Well, we have many means to communicate to the public and to the school, to families, and the rest of the community with media, television, newspaper. We have the ability to reach out to our families through direct mail and that kind of thing.
Do you have an actual plan in place? I mean, one of the reasons I bring this up is because a couple of things. One is on the optional sales tax, we knew it was coming. We started more than 6 months ago, and I made it a part of speaking almost in every group I've spoken to, but most citizens still don't know about it. Things like this, what we've done for TMDL remediation, it's remarkable how much we've tried to publicize our different projects, but how little the public still knows about it. So to me, this is really problematic of having an August 30th primary for something so serious.
Mr. Chairman, I think, isn't that when the last one was approved, though?
Correct. We did it in the August election as well. We will use the same
pre-lead-up time.
So the second question is, as I understand it, with the 0.6 mils back in 2012, you had the support of the charter schools, but what transpired since then didn't really work out the way the charter schools thought it was going to do. Do you have the specific support of the charter schools for this 0.5 mil?
Yes, I can't speak to what happened in the past. I wasn't here. I can't tell you whether they supported it or they didn't support it, or what conversations we had with them in the past or not. We've been working with them to craft the language. Part of this resolution is different. There's a clause in this resolution addressing the charter school funding that they have reviewed and agreed to and are actually quite happy with the language. So we have the full support of the charter schools in this resolution.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, on that same topic, I know a number of the charter representatives said they're very happy with this agreement. They participated through the whole process, and they're supporting the measure. But the time frame to get the message out, like the chairman had mentioned, I think it was November, December of last year, we decided to start pushing, telling the public starting in January. And even though we've all been out on, I think we've visited all the municipalities, either Jason or Joe has gone to each city council, town council, trying to bring them up to speed, that they just don't know all the things that we've been doing with the money that you would think would be obvious, but they don't. So we wish you good luck on, getting the communications piece out on this, because without it, you would obviously have a big budget hole to fill.
Correct.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, Supervisor.
Thank you.
Chair will entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve.
Yeah. We have a motion for Commissioner Davis, second from Commissioner Fleischer. Mr. Johnson wanted to speak.
And Mr. Chairman, just along those lines, just out of respect for the autonomy of the elected officials of the school board, I think they have to come to us for this. This is not indicative of our support nor rejection of the proposal. It's just as much as this is a formality for them to move forward.
Exactly, I think so. But I think it's a good time to get some questions asked and answered. So I think we've served a public purpose by doing it. But it is more of a procedural type of thing, just making sure some of the boxes are checked.
Yes,
We're
sir.
not really here to have substantive
No.
impact one way or the other. Mr. Johnson.
The question's already been answered, so I have no question.
Thank you very much. Anybody else from the public? So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Now move to Commissioner Matters. Commissioner Zork, calculating the cost of county projects.
Gosh, I forgot that I had these in there. That was so long ago. First one, and I did reach out to Ken Grudens at the Land Trust to let him know this is not anything related to the recent project that they had brought forward. But when we look at a project, in some cases when we are purchasing a piece of land that's currently on the tax rolls, whatever the project is we're doing, there's also a set of revenue that we will be giving up as the land goes from private to public ownership. The utilization of the property, it would never then become developed and increasing the tax base to it. In projects where we do private-public partnerships where there's using the land trust as a recent example, we were going to be locking and unlocking the gates, doing some basic mowing twice a month or something like that, that they do have a cost associated with those. And I'm trying just to be as transparent as we can. As if we're going to go into something so that we understand and the public understands what we're giving up for future revenue, what we're assuming is a future liabilities, for our portion of a private-public partnership or any type of agreement where we're agreeing to pick up maintenance, repair, replacement of something. So I wanted to see the other commissioners' thoughts. Are they, in going forward, what I would like to see is a one-page spreadsheet that could be filled out probably after the initial one, filled out in probably a 10 or 15-minute exercise that would accompany future packages that come to us. I'm not looking at a in-depth review. I'm just looking at if we're purchasing a piece of property that's coming off the tax rolls, you look at the property appraiser's site or the tax collector's site, it'd say it's paying X amount of taxes, so we know what we're giving up for future revenue. If there's items that we are including to pick up the maintenance on, if it's one that somebody else has purchased the property, but we're going to be doing a portion of the ongoing expense. Once we would load in the different maintenance cost categories and a ballpark estimate based on staff's historical experience of, okay, we know if we're going to mow 2 acres of grass, we know that's going to take, 2 hours or some time frame. So after you build the sheet one time, it would be a very short exercise to run through to just know the back-end financial implications of any partnerships that we might be looking into or something that the county may be buying that we're giving up future tax revenue on once it goes from private ownership to public.
Yeah. Basically, as I understand it, you're just asking for a pro forma basic annual cost of the project, which would, they can do basically a 10-year pro forma on it with that on one sheet of paper, but with the understanding that reality is never what you plan, but it gives us a good ballpark of what the cost is going to be.
Exactly.
I think that's good for planning purposes. I think it's good for the public to know, and whether it's a public-private partnership or anything else like that, which is a new capital project, like the intergenerational facility or something like that.
Right.
So you'd like to direct the finance department to come up with a
Yeah,
template?
and they could bring something back, but I'd like to see what the other.
Commissioner O'Brien.
Yep, Mr. Chairman, this is good. My only concern is we're only looking at one side of the ledger, the cost side. And the positive side is a little bit harder to measure. Like how many people have moved to Indian River County because when they drive over the Barber Bridge and look north, they know those islands have been bought and preserved. And what's that positive revenue from that project? And those are or the Greenway trails and these other projects. How many people will come here because they heard Indian River County has a lot of conservation land, they're green, and those are all hard to measure, you know, to really put your finger on. So the only thing I would caution is if we do this, is keep in mind.
Good point.
There is the balance of this
There's
as
an intangible that you can't measure
There's an intangible
as
so we can't just say, okay, you know, we're going to lose $500,000 of tax revenue, so let's not do this.
Right.
Without looking at the benefits
plus side.
that creates this community that, you know, we're known for having this really great green community with a lot of conservation land and opportunities. And again, that's harder to measure, but I think it's
Right. I think you could
out.
list out the community benefits of, or the attractions that people might want to come here because of something that we're becoming a part of. But that's a good point, to have both sides of the ledger.
Again, I think that we're responsible enough to understand that it does have benefits.
Right.
But it's so speculative, you know, you don't almost have to have some expert each time you have a public-private partnership bring in to say what the benefits of it are. So we have grounds for concrete determination of costs. But I mean, while I would love to have a greenway right outside my door, and I would think that that would add tremendously to the value of my property, putting a dollar amount on that is such a tenuous exercise that I think that we understand the type of community we want to build and the benefits to it for not only our residents but for tourism. But the benefits of knowing what the expenses are ahead of time, not just for long-term costs, but so that we can understand what it's doing to our own budget, I think are much clearer and much more solid. So for my preference, I think it's going ahead with the costs are probably the better side of it.
Okay.
So do we have a motion for this?
We need
No. Motion would be is to direct staff to come up with a simplified spreadsheet that would factor in the items listed, loss of tax revenue, cost sharing, maintenance agreement, operating expenses, but also to include, if possible, some language where you would also mention the positive benefits of the project, which, so that would be the motion, Mr.
So
Chairman.
can we have it measured to mention the positive benefits but not value them?
Yes, that'd be fine.
Fine, that'd be great. So there's a motion from Commissioner Zork, second from Commissioner Flesher. Anybody from the public? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. And next, I believe, is another item from Commissioner Zork.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next one is, was prompted after, well, for a number of reasons. Over the last couple of years, we have, for very good reasons, we've purchased property on certain thoroughfare paths that we need 10 or 20 feet, and it's much smarter dollars to buy the property, carve off what we need, put it back on the market, and sell it. But when we sell property as a sealed bid, I think we potentially, in some cases, we may be leaving some of the upside for the private community to pick up the benefit. And I'm looking at how can we maximize dollars for the taxpayers' side. Using another scenario, I noticed that the city of Vero Beach had placed a commercial real estate sign on their acreage that they're selling next to historic Dodgertown. So I contacted the attorney's office and I had mentioned, you know, what provision allows them to do that we can't do something similar. And Dylan reviewed the statute with me of where we're governed under Florida Statute 125, which has some limiting factors of how we can dispose of something. So what I'm looking for with this item is to consider broadening our scope of options that we can use to dispose of real property. Dylan also found Citrus County had recently gone through and did a pretty thorough job of providing other means and measures of how you can dispose of an asset. I look at, you can always go back, if you're not successful in one of your other measures, you always can go back to the sealed bid process down the road, but initially we may have a way of procuring a higher sale price if we had some of the other options that are available to us. The Citrus County, I have not spoken with anybody there. Dylan had found this through some of the research in helping me put this item together, but it looks like they've it's pretty robust. They thought of a lot of different scenarios. I don't know what prompted them to look at having the flexibility. The cities and towns are not governed by Section 125. That's why the city, without any additional provisions, could basically go out to the open market and list something. I don't know how they picked the company that they had chosen. But again, the goal is to try to maximize, if we are going to dispose of a piece of property, how do we maximize the sale price to the taxpayers as the money comes back into the county coffers? First, I'd like to see if there's any questions. I will craft out a motion out of this, but I'd like to see if there's any other questions or concerns.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner O'Brien.
I appreciate where Commissioner Zorka is trying to get here with this. I'd have two concerns. One is, how would you go about, selecting a realtor? Because you can pick one, and then there'll be 8,000
that don't like it.
That don't like it.
Right.
And maybe a solution there is you could have the Realtors Association kind of be the listing agency as the association, and then any commissions would go to benefit the association, which would benefit all the realtors, and that way you would get the MLS, and they would all get a little benefit, or they can structure it somehow. I don't know, but so that'd be my one concern. And then secondly, I do appreciate trying to maximize our return, but in a way, to me, it gets a little sketchy, because we use our power of eminent domain to take a property.
Right.
And, I don't want the perception out there that, okay, we only need 10 feet of right-of-way, but we're going to take your whole property, skim off our 10 feet, and then try to flip this property and make a profit.
Right.
So just...
Let me clarify, though, that's not what's been happening.
Right.
I understand.
And let me, if you...
I understand. I think we've kind of taken a very passive approach to selling these properties with the sealed bid and not being aggressive.
Not that, the other side of that you just described.
Okay.
In fact, let me describe how I see what's happening on some of these thoroughfares and right-of-ways. And that is we are going to people that we're saying, listen, this road's going to be widened. The county has an interest. If we need some of your property to do that, would you like to sell it? If so, and be a willing seller, the county's interested in it. Then the county, through a willing seller process where the seller agrees, the county agrees, we can consummate the deal, and then we take the property that we need off the deed for our right-of-way, and then the county has a piece of property there that is now considered surplus that we no longer need. So it's not like we're taking the property, it's just we're being upfront and saying to the residents that live there, do you want to live on the road? It is going to be widened. Yes, we do have the ability to use the eminent domain process, but we'd rather not if we can have a willing seller. So that's just sounded a little bit like we're coming in there and taking the property and then trying to make a profit.
And you're right, although I do believe that all of those contracts for sale, there is a clause that says, whereas the county does have eminent domain.
And I think we owe it to them to let them know. I mean, clearly, it would be disingenuous for us to say this is our only option. Really, we do have the option. And I think that's important because in the eminent domain process, we can only take absolutely what we deem necessary. And therefore, if that means we can, the 10 foot in front of their door, if that's what's deemed necessary according to the plans, that is all we can take. We can't take any more of their front door or anything like that. We can only take what is necessary. And then in explaining that to a potential buyer, or excuse me, a seller, it's important for them to understand that you really want to live next to the sidewalk, to where you can, it'll be a part of your front yard. And that's why, in my opinion, we should disclose that to anybody that is under the threat of our ability to do an eminent domain process. Because at the end of the day, most people say, I don't want to live on a 4-lane highway. Let's work out something that is fair. And in that process, I like it because I would rather pay a property owner a premium than I would expert witnesses and lawyers from Orlando to drag us through a knothole backwards, as it should be if we're taking their property and just need that 10 feet.
And I agree, Commissioner, and I appreciate where Commissioner Zork's trying to get us a little bit better return.
Let me help you with that.
The perception that we're getting in the real estate
No,
business.
and I appreciate that, but we are. And I've been quiet about it, and I appreciate you bringing this up. And there's no doubt in my mind that we have been leaving money on the table whenever we do the sealed bid process. Out of all the ways of disposing of property, to me, the most inefficient is sealed bid process. Why? Because we have staff sitting out there doing the open house. To me, that's competing against the private sector, something that the government shouldn't be in. If you really wanted to maximize the amount of return in this instance, it would be to level the playing field so everybody's on the same page. How do you do that? You do that with a public outcry auction subject to confirmation by the Board of County Commissioners. If we don't like the price, we say no. But what that does is we've got a firm that already does this for us with our equipment, and they get huge crowds there. In the sealed bid process, it's a legal ad like this in the legal department, and it says a for sale by owner sign out front. Now, Commissioners, we've all are savvy enough in real estate up here to know that's probably not the most savvy way of going about taking care of this process. I would suggest if you want to try something different is do a live public outcry auction subject to this Board of County Commissioners confirmation. And the reason for that is one of the most important things about the auction process is the story. And to hammer that point home, the best story is an estate. You think about that, the heirs just want their money and move on. That's a good story. That in and of itself will drive a crowd to the auction. In our instance, it's a credible story, the fact that the county got their 10 feet they need. This is deemed surplus. They really just want to get as much money back as they possibly can so that they can move on. That too is an important story and very credible. More importantly, it levels the playing field for every realtor out there. It levels the playing field for them because anybody that has a client, they can register that client and bring that client to the auction, and if their client's the high bidder, they have a chance to make a commission. That's what I would suggest. And another reason why I think that Citrus County is allowed to get away with this, and Dylan, shake this out if you could, I believe they're a charter county.
Actually, the issue boils down in the state statute. There are some default provisions and limitations on counties across the board under 125. What the statute says is essentially you have the ability to adopt alternative procedures, and that's where they kind of open the door. So we have the same ability to adopt alternative procedures to open the door to other avenues outside those set forth in the statute.
And I don't know how to, for example, the firm that the city hired is probably a good firm out of Palm Beach County or South Florida, and it's kind of like, you know, why we didn't have any good ones up here or exactly what played into that. Again, in my opinion, this levels the playing field. You're leveling the terms. All the terms are the same. That is, all cash closing. You close in 30 days. Everybody standing there at the auction has to abide by that, and the only thing that they can do is bid. And if they're not the high bidder and they're mad, well, all they had to do is bid.
But you're looking at one specific way of getting rid of a piece of property, Commissioner Davis. I think that this citrus model has multiple ways of getting rid of a piece of property. And my guess is, or my feeling is, if we're going to go ahead with this type of statute, that it ought to be wider rather than narrow, and let the specific piece of property determine at the time which method we actually use. And I wouldn't want to limit us right off the bat to going from one form of getting rid of a piece of property to one form but slightly different of getting rid of a piece of property.
Chairman, if I might, thanks for those comments. And that is clearly a provision that's allowed in what Citrus County's done, and some may be suitable for that process, others, and I'm looking at where we have a number of property items, the 17th Street ball fields. How, if using a scenario, right now, if you did sealed bid and it's zoned RS6, somebody's going to bid low based on, well, today it's only at 6 units to the acre. Who's going to build a single-family house across from the football stadium and the high school? Nobody. But that's how they're going to pay you. If you had this process and you had it, in let's say this case listed, and a buyer came in and said, I'll pay you X, but I need 90 days to get one approval from the city, or whatever it is, would we be willing to entertain that? We would have to decide, or the county administrator would decide, is that additional value worth waiting the 90 days to see what happens? In some cases it may be, in some cases it may not. We'd have to put the administrator as being a point.
But that's where that's where the playing field is no longer level. And you're having that one person the opportunity to make that change to be able to do it.
Well, if it's listed,
No, that's
listed
not
in general.
accurate. Everybody would have the opportunity to make the
submit an
same, submit the same type of offer.
Okay.
And
Right.
we're going to take the one with the highest dollar amount, basically.
exactly.
But the playing field is level.
So
The needs of the individual buyer may differ.
But see, that's where I see it just a little bit different, is basically, if you make that change, well, then that person, we don't know that somebody else out there that can make that change wouldn't pay more.
I think that the decision to go you need to have the procedure a little different than citrus. I don't think the county administrator should make the decision. He should come back to the board
That's fine.
and say, here, we're looking at disposing of this. Here's what we recommend, and the board make a decision to go in, just in case there's a board member that doesn't really think you want to sell, doesn't really want to sell for other reasons. So I think that procedurally that I think all that should come to the board. The board, you have the ability to do it, but upon board approval.
But again, we're not going to vote on any specific form today. We're going to give staff some direction today. So
Yes.
we'll ask staff to come up to include things like Mr. Baird's comments, but give us the best possible ordinance at the end of the day.
You know, Mr. Chairman, why does an overwhelming amount of, for Councilor, why does an overwhelming amount of our counties utilize the sealed competitive bid?
Because it's safe.
Because that's what's in the state statute today, unless you actually move for some alternative.
And it's the avenue in which leaves us most transparent, least likely to be subjected to any possibility of impropriety or concealment or selection process. And I just think it's so time-proven. And I appreciate looking at the optimization, but I think it's a tremendous burden upon the county administrator to be involved with that selection process. Albeit, we talked about, just discussed it coming back to the board. Now, you have 5 members selecting how it's going to take place or how we're going to do this. I just believe that keeping it lean and clean by just having the sealed bid, it may not be the most optimum approach as far as financial, but it most certainly is the one that shows us the greatest faith in the good stewardship of any property transaction. I also find a little bit of challenge with selecting the realtor. Which one do we make, we anoint as king of the county?
You always go out of town.
And and I agree. And then you know what? We're not buying local.
Yeah.
You know, we have to support our own community. Commissioner O'Brien stating, well, and I like the idea. I just don't know if that's doable. Why are we going down this path? I don't have a good feel of taking us away from what we're doing, how we're doing it now. No, that's not a business as usual. Let's just keep on going. It's just so time proven, and an overwhelming amount of the counties do utilize this approach. And
just along those same lines, when the school board got ready to sell Osceola Magnet, as well as the Pleasant Hills property up there off South Winter Beach Road, they had both of those went to public outcry auction subject to the board's approval. They got $770,000 for Osceola Magnet site at the time, wound up being bought by the church, and then round up about $330,000 for the piece up there on North Winter Beach Road, or South Winter Beach Road. And there's to me, that's just the most clean, everybody standing toe to toe, eye to eye, competing, and the only reason why they didn't get it is for one reason only. It went past their number.
Okay, well, I think we've pretty much covered this right now. Commissioner Zorp, you want to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that staff, I guess in this case it would be the attorney's office and combined with the administrator's office, look at bringing back additional means for disposing of real property that the county may deem as surplus, and come back with you've heard some of the discussion,
Yes, sir.
some of the suggestions that were made if there's a way to incorporate Commissioner O'Brien's. I think that's a neat approach, and if that could work, I think that would be good.
And real quick, just another question is, Joe, I just met we have a new land acquisition agent we hired, I think. Does she
Yes,
have a
a
real estate
replacement.
license?
Pardon?
Does she have a real estate license?
I'll have to look, I don't know.
Okay.
She doesn't need
She's a
one.
replacement.
Well, I know she doesn't need one, but if she had one, then that would get us listed on the MLS.
If she became a realtor, and then that'd have to probably be under her broker, of which she doesn't have a broker.
And I don't think that provision, but in re-summarizing the motion is to have county staff bring back additional means and measures of disposing of declared surplus property and see what they bring back. And
Yeah, I think that with the discussion, staff has a good enough idea of what you have in mind. We have a motion.
I'll be glad to second that to give Dylan more work.
We have a second motion from Commissioner Zork, second from Commissioner O'Brien. Before the vote, I just want to say that I'm going to support the motion in order to see what's drafted up. I believe Commissioner Flesher had some very good points. So for me, when it comes time in the future, the new procedure will have to somehow be clearly better than what we're doing now.
Right.
So.
And, Mr. Chairman, I'll add to that, if council is happy to do this work and explore with the possibility of the outcome that I would not be able to support it, I will support the endeavor for exploration to see where we can go and what we can do, but I have my strong reservations.
I'm with Commissioner Solari and Commissioner Flesher on it, but I'll try to keep an open mind for the next 5 minutes.
We have.
I hope we vote sooner than that.
We have the motion from Commissioner Zork, seconded by Commissioner O'Brien. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you very much.
Procedurally, would this board like me to draft a memo and an ordinance, bring it back to the board, and then have the approval of the board then to move forward with that ordinance and advertising? Or would you like me to advertise and
I'd just like you to bring back some ideas.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Spend all the time on
So
it.
don't bother even with an ordinance, maybe just a memo of ideas. Perfect. Thank you very much for the direction.
Cherry pick what we like and then goes into an ordinance.
Next up is special districts and board.
Approve the minutes of December 8th.
We have a motion to approve the minutes from Commissioner O'Brien, second by Commissioner Flesher. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Passes 5-0. Next up is affiliation agreement between Palm Beach State College and Indian River County Emergency Services District.
Staff recommendation.
Motion from Commissioner O'Brien, second by Commissioner Flesher. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Award letter and expenditure approval for FEMA assistance to firefighters grant agreement.
Staff recommendation.
We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, beating out Commissioner O'Brien, who seconds the motion. Any comments? All in favor? Aye. Passes 5-0. And we now, as the last item on today's agenda, have the authorization for final payment and release of retainage to Barth Construction, Inc. for the construction of Fire Station Number 13.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion from Commissioner Flesher, seconded by Commissioner O'Brien. Commissioner O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just staff report says the project is under budget by $170,000, so that's always good news.
Always good news. Any comments?
Thank you, gentlemen.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you, everyone.
One emergency services announcements. I know Brian's been keeping me up to speed because I've been nagging him on when the 2 ambulances would be here. I did see them late yesterday. I posed for a picture with one this morning, and radios are going in another one. But when do you think they'll be ready for their first dispatch calls?
By the end of the week.
By the end of the week.
So is the tree going to offer free rides, for the first 3 weeks?
We can talk about that.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I got one question after.
That's it. We're adjourned.
Did you do it?